After 15 years in special forces, I came home to find my wife working as help in the 12 million villa I bought. She didn't recognize me. I called my attorney. It was time for justice. You don't survive 15 years in an elite unit without learning how to stay calm when something is wrong. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped through the gates of the estate. The house was worth $12 million, 12.4 to be exact. I bought it in 2009 with money I earned in places that don't show up on Google Maps, doing work that doesn't appear on any resume. It sat on 4 acres in Fairfield County, Connecticut, stone facade, 8 bedrooms, a circular driveway that could fit 12 cars. It was meant to be a safe harbor for my wife Sophia and our 2 children while I was deployed, a place where they could build a life while I kept them safe from a distance. I returned without warning, no calls, no emails, no announcements. I wanted to see my family before the world touched them again, before I had to become someone else for the next mission, before the weight of what I did for a living settled back onto my shoulders. The guard at the gate didn't recognize me. He was new, young, early 20s, wearing a private security uniform that looked freshly pressed. He checked his tablet twice, scrolling through what I assumed was an authorized visitor list. Name? He asked. Commander Garrett Sullivan, I said. This is my house. He looked up slowly, confused. Sir, I don't have you listed. Call the main house. Tell them I'm here. He did. Someone answered. He spoke quietly, glanced at me twice, then hung up. You're cleared to proceed, sir. That alone told me everything had changed. I'd built this security system myself. Biometric scanners, facial recognition, multi-layer verification protocols. The fact that none of it recognized me meant someone had wiped me from the system entirely. I drove the rental car up the driveway, parked near the fountain, and walked toward the front entrance. The gardens looked immaculate, too immaculate. Every hedge trimmed to exactness, every flower bed geometrically perfect. It looked like a property staged for sale, not a home where children lived. Inside, the house felt sterile, perfectly clean, emotionless, cold. The marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Not a single family photo on the walls. No backpacks by the stairs. No shoes kicked off near the door. It looked like a museum. Then I heard the sound of a mop sliding across marble, the quiet splash of water being wrung out. A woman stepped into view wearing a gray cleaning uniform, hair pulled back, face down, focused on the floor. She moved efficiently, methodically, the way someone moves when they've done the same task 1,000 times. It took me 3 seconds to recognize my own wife. Sophia, I said. She looked up, startled. Her eyes went wide but stayed empty. Not the emptiness of someone who didn't care, the emptiness of someone who had learned not to react. Sir, she replied softly. That word cut deeper than any blade I'd carried in hostile territory. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, 2 teenagers appeared at the top of the staircase, my children. Olivia was 16 now, tall, polished, wearing designer clothes I didn't recognize. Her hair was styled perfectly, her posture rigid. She looked like a young woman who had learned to carry herself with authority. Nathan was 14, broader than I remembered. His face had lost its softness. He wore expensive sneakers and held a phone in one hand, barely glancing up as he descended the stairs. They looked at Sophia the way you look at hired help, present but irrelevant, necessary but invisible. Dad, Olivia said sharply, as if I'd broken a rule by coming home unannounced. Nathan didn't even look at me. His eyes stayed on his phone. She's working, he muttered. She's not supposed to talk to guests. Sophia lowered her eyes immediately. Her shoulders curled inward, making herself smaller. In that moment, anger didn't rise. Understanding did. I stepped past my children without a word, walked into the study on the first floor, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. I made one call. Richard, I said to my attorney. My voice was steady, controlled. I'm standing in my house. My wife doesn't recognize me as her husband. My children treat her like she doesn't exist. It's time. Richard Holloway had been my lawyer for 12 years. Former JAG attorney, 48 years old, practiced family and estate law in Manhattan. He'd handled my will, my property acquisitions, my deployment paperwork. He knew exactly what I meant when I said it was time. He didn't ask what happened. He only said, I'll start the process. Don't confront anyone yet. Document everything. I spent the next 2 hours observing. Sophia moved through the house like a ghost. She cleaned the kitchen. She organized the pantry. She folded laundry in the utility room with mechanical precision. At one point, Olivia walked past her and dropped a wet towel on the floor without looking. Pick that up, Olivia said. Sophia did, without hesitation, without protest. Nathan came into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Where's the imported sparkling water? He asked, no one in particular. I'll get it, sir, Sophia said quietly. Sir. My 14-year-old son was called Sir by his own mother. I watched my mother arrive around 3 in the afternoon. She drove a black Mercedes SUV and parked like she owned the place, which, technically, I was beginning to realize she might. Eleanor Sullivan, 64 years old, former corporate attorney. The kind of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and treated every conversation like a negotiation. She'd always been controlling, always believed she knew better than everyone else, but I never thought she'd do this. She walked into the house carrying designer shopping bags and didn't acknowledge Sophia at all. Garrett, she said when she saw me. Cool, measured. You didn't mention you were coming. I didn't realize I needed permission to enter my own home. She smiled. That polite, empty smile she'd perfected over decades. Of course not. I'm just surprised. You usually coordinate. Where's Sophia? Sophia. Who? My wife. My mother glanced toward the kitchen where Sophia was preparing coffee. Oh, she's working. The children prefer not to be disturbed during her tasks. Her tasks? Yes, she's been very helpful with household management. I felt my jaw tighten. We need to talk. Privately. Of course. We stepped into the study. I closed the door. What did you do? I asked. My mother sat down in the leather chair behind the desk, my desk, and crossed her legs. I managed a difficult situation while you were gone. Someone had to. Managed. Sophia was struggling. The children needed stability. I stepped in. By doing what exactly? By ensuring the household ran properly. By protecting the children's inheritance. By making sure she understood her responsibilities. Her responsibilities as what? As someone who needs to earn her place here. The words hung in the air like smoke. This is her home, I said quietly. This home is held in a family trust. The trustee makes decisions in your absence. That trustee is me. There it was. I'd set up the trust years ago as a protective measure, in case something happened to me overseas, in case I didn't come back. The trustee was supposed to ensure Sophia and the children were cared for, not controlled, not erased. I want to speak with Sophia, I said, alone. She's working. Now! I found Sophia in the laundry room, folding towels with the kind of precision that comes from fear of getting it wrong. Sophia, I said gently. She glanced up, then toward a camera mounted in the corner near the ceiling. I have tasks to complete, she said. I'm your husband. Her hands stopped moving. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Confusion. Fear. Hope buried so deep it was almost invisible. Please, I said. Just talk to me. She hesitated, then nodded. We walked outside to the garden, away from the cameras, away from the house. That's when she finally broke. They told me you were gone, she whispered. That you weren't coming back. Your mother said the mission went wrong. That you didn't survive. My chest tightened. She said she would protect the children if I cooperated, Sophia continued. If I signed some documents, if I accepted certain terms. What terms? That I would work, that I would stay quiet, that I would accept responsibility for things I didn't do. She explained it slowly, painfully, like someone describing a car accident they survived but don't fully understand. How documents were placed in front of her while she was exhausted, grieving, isolated. How accusations appeared the moment she questioned missing funds from the household accounts. How a theft report existed before anything actually went missing. How my mother offered to make everything disappear. The accusations, the police involvement, the threat of losing custody if Sophia worked, stayed quiet, and accepted her new role. They said if I behaved, Sophia said, voice shaking, I could stay near the kids. That if I caused trouble, they'd prove I was unstable. That they'd take Olivia and Nathan somewhere I'd never find them. That was when I understood the cruelty wasn't physical. It was systematic. It was designed to erase Sophia without anyone noticing, to turn her into something invisible, to make my children forget she was their mother. How long? I asked. 3 years. 3 years. I'd been deployed in classified operations for most of that time. Limited communication. Encrypted channels only. I'd sent messages through secure military networks, but I never received responses. I assumed Sophia was protecting operational security by keeping quiet. I never imagined someone was intercepting everything. I kept records, Sophia said suddenly. I didn't know what else to do, so I kept everything. What kind of records? Documents they made me sign. Emails with altered dates. Transaction records showing money moved from accounts I never accessed. Notes about conversations. Photographs of the children being coached on what to say about me. She pulled out her phone. An old model. Cracked screen. She opened a hidden folder containing hundreds of files. I didn't know if anyone would ever believe me, she said, but I couldn't let them erase the truth completely. I looked at the files. Dates. Times. Screenshots. Audio recordings. Everything. You did good, I said. You did exactly right. She started crying. Not the quiet, controlled kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes they might finally be safe. I called Richard again that night. I need you to file emergency motions immediately, I said. I'm sending you documentation now. I forwarded Sophia's files. All of them. Richard called back 23 minutes later. Garrett, this is beyond family court. This is criminal. I know. Your mother fabricated evidence. She coerced your wife into servitude. She manipulated minors. This is fraud, identity theft, false imprisonment. I know, I said again. What do? We document everything tonight. Tomorrow morning I file for emergency custody modification, dissolution of the trust, and restraining orders. I'm also contacting the state attorney's office. Do it. And Garrett, yeah, your children don't know the truth. When this comes out, it's going to destroy the world they think they understand. I know. Are you ready for that? I looked through the study window at Sophia sitting alone in the kitchen, drinking coffee with hands that still shook. I'm ready. The next morning I sat down with Olivia and Nathan. They looked annoyed that I'd interrupted their routines. Olivia had a tennis lesson. Nathan had a tutoring session. We need to talk about your mother, I said. She's not our mother, Olivia said immediately. She's staff. Who told you that? Grandmother explained it. Mom left. She couldn't handle being a parent. This woman is just someone who helps around the house. Nathan nodded. She's unstable. Grandmother said we should be kind but keep distance. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Your mother Grandmother didn't leave, I said carefully. Her name is Sophia. She's been here the entire time. That's not true, Olivia said. I remember Mom leaving. I remember Grandmother explaining what happened. What do you remember specifically? She hesitated. I remember being told. Grandmother showed us documents, proof that Sophia was hired to help and then tried to steal from us. Did you see her steal anything? Olivia's confidence wavered. No, but Grandmother said, what did Grandmother show you? Silence. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Papers, official-looking stuff. Did you read them? I was 11. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photograph. Sophia holding Olivia as a newborn. The date stamp clear in the corner. This is your mother, I said. Sophia Rodriguez Sullivan. She married me in 2006. She gave birth to you, Olivia, in 2009. And you, Nathan, in 2011. She's been in this house since the day we bought it. Olivia stared at the photo. Her face went pale. I showed them more. Family photos, medical records, birth certificates. Grandmother said. Olivia's voice trailed off. Grandmother lied, I said, and I'm going to prove it. My mother arrived with her attorney at noon. Gregory Ashford, 62 years old, partner at a white shoe law firm in Greenwich. Expensive suit, calm demeanor, the kind of lawyer who specialized in making problems disappear. Garrett, my mother said smoothly. I understand you've been upsetting the children with stories. Stories, I repeated. Yes. Sophia has clearly manipulated you. This is why we established the trust. To protect against exactly this kind of... Stop, I said. Just stop. Richard arrived 30 seconds later, carrying a briefcase that looked heavier than usual. Mrs. Sullivan, Richard said. Mr. Ashford, I'm serving you with emergency motions filed this morning with the Connecticut Superior Court. He handed them formal documents. My mother's attorney scanned them quickly. His expression didn't change. This is unnecessary, Ashford said. We can resolve this through mediation. Your client fabricated evidence of theft against Sophia Sullivan, Richard said. She created false police reports, manipulated bank records, and coerced a vulnerable person into involuntary servitude. We have documentation, alleged documentation, time-stamped, metadata verified, authenticated documentation, Richard continued, including emails from Mrs. Eleanor Sullivan's personal account discussing the creation of false theft accusations before any alleged crime occurred. My mother's face went rigid. Ashford's jaw tightened. That's impossible. It's in the filing, Richard said, along with recordings of conversations where Mrs. Sullivan instructed others on what to tell the children about their mother, and financial records showing systematic diversion of household funds to accounts she controlled. Where did you get? Mrs. Sophia Sullivan maintained comprehensive records over 3 years, Richard said. Every document you forced her to sign, every conversation you had within her hearing, every instruction you gave while believing she was too broken to fight back. The room fell silent. Furthermore, Richard continued, I've contacted the Connecticut State Attorney's Office. They're reviewing the materials for potential criminal charges. My mother finally spoke. This is absurd. I was protecting my grandchildren. You erased their mother and enslaved her in her own home, Richard said flatly. There's no protection in that. Ashford stood. We'll contest every allegation. You're welcome to try, Richard said. The emergency hearing is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Judge Patricia Montalvo presiding. She has reviewed the preliminary evidence and granted temporary restraining orders effective immediately. He handed more papers. Mrs. Eleanor Sullivan, you are barred from contact with Olivia and Nathan Sullivan. You are barred from the property at 47 Riverside Drive. You are barred from accessing any accounts related to the family trust. Violations will result in immediate arrest. My mother's hands shook as she held the papers. This is my family, she whispered. No, I said. This is mine, and you tried to destroy it. The emergency hearing was held the next morning at Stamford Superior Court. Judge Patricia Montalvo was 56 years old, 22 years on the bench, known for cutting through procedural nonsense and focusing on facts. She sat behind the bench reviewing a file that had grown to nearly 300 pages overnight. My mother's attorney argued that Sophia had manipulated me, that I'd been away too long to understand the household dynamics, that the trust was functioning exactly as designed. Then Richard presented the evidence. Exhibit A, an email from my mother to her personal assistant dated April 17th, 3 years prior. Draft police report for theft. Amount should be significant enough to justify custody concerns, but not so large it requires formal prosecution. We need leverage, not charges. The date was 5 days before anything allegedly went missing. Judge Montalvo looked up slowly. Mr. Ashford, your client drafted a theft accusation before the alleged crime? Ashford shuffled papers. That's taken out of context. What context justifies pre-drafting a police report? Silence. Exhibit B. Bank records showing systematic transfers from household accounts to an LLC controlled by my mother. 68 transfers over 30 months. Total, $487,000. Mrs. Sullivan, Judge Montalvo said. Can you explain these transactions? Estate management fees, my mother said. Compensation for my time. The trust agreement specifies no management fees, Richard said, and none of these transfers were disclosed to the beneficiaries or co-trustees. Exhibit C, recordings. Richard played audio of my mother coaching Olivia and Nathan on what to say about Sophia, teaching them to call her staff, explaining that their real mother had abandoned them. You need to understand, children, that she chose chose to leave. She wasn't strong enough to be a mother. It's sad, but some people just aren't capable. Olivia's voice, younger, confused. But she's still here. No, darling, that's just someone who works for us now. She looks similar, but it's not the same person. Your real mother is gone. The courtroom went silent. Judge Montalvo closed her folder. Mr. Ashford, I've seen many things in family court. Custody disputes, financial disagreements, genuine confusion about what's best for children. This is not that. She turned to my mother. Mrs. Sullivan, you fabricated criminal accusations to gain leverage over your daughter-in-law. You systematically stole from accounts held in trust for your grandchildren. You manipulated those grandchildren into rejecting their mother through calculated psychological abuse. My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. You created documentation designed to make Sophia Sullivan appear incompetent and dangerous. You coerced her into servitude through threats of losing her children. You erased her identity in her own home. Judge Montalvo leaned forward. This is not guardianship. This is theft dressed as care. This is abuse disguised as protection. She turned to the court clerk. Protective orders are extended indefinitely. The family trust is dissolved effective immediately. All assets revert to Commander Garrett Sullivan and Sophia Sullivan as joint owners. Mrs. Eleanor Sullivan is barred from contact with the minor children pending criminal investigation. All transferred funds will be frozen and subject to civil recovery. My mother stood, shaking. Your Honor, please. Furthermore, Judge Montalvo continued, I'm referring this matter to the state attorney for review of potential charges including fraud, theft, false reporting, identity theft, and custodial interference. She looked at Sophia, who sat quietly beside me. Mrs. Sullivan, you're free to return to your home with full authority. Your children will receive family therapy to address the manipulation they've experienced, and I'm deeply sorry for what you've endured. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Judge Montalvo turned back to my mother. You had every advantage, education, resources, legal knowledge, and you used all of it to torture someone who couldn't fight back. That's not family. That's predation. Court adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Olivia stood near the car, staring at Sophia like she was seeing a ghost. Mom? She asked quietly. Her voice was small, uncertain. Sophia nodded. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. I didn't. They told us. I know, Sophia said. It's not your fault. Nathan followed a second later, slower, his face flushed with shame. I called you staff, he whispered. I treated you like you were told lies, Sophia said gently, by someone you trusted. That's not on you. But I should have known you were a child, Sophia said, and I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Olivia collapsed into Sophia's arms, sobbing. Nathan joined them a moment later. I stepped back, giving them space. My mother appeared at the courthouse entrance with her attorney. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. She walked toward me, leaned close, and whispered, This isn't finished. I didn't look at her. It is, I said quietly. You just don't know it yet. The investigation that followed was quiet, but thorough. Forensic accountants traced every diverted dollar, every forged signature, every carefully constructed lie. They found shell companies, offshore accounts, a systematic pattern of theft that dated back to the first month I deployed overseas. The state attorney's office filed criminal charges 3 weeks later. Fraud, theft, false reporting, custodial interference. Each charge supported by mountains of documentation that Sophia had quietly, desperately preserved. My mother's attorney called Richard begging to settle. Richard replied with 2 words. Too late. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was set for 2 months later. 6 months after I first walked through those gates, I sat in the garden with Sophia while Olivia and Nathan played basketball on the court we'd built when they were younger. They were healing. Slowly. Therapy helped. Time helped. Honesty helped. Sophia's hand found mine. I never thought we'd get here, she said. Where? Home. I looked at the house. Our house. Finally, ours again. She almost won, Sophia said quietly. Almost doesn't count. What made you realize? When you first walked in, I thought about it. You called me sir, and I knew that word didn't belong in your mouth. She smiled. Sad, but real. What happens to her? Sophia asked. She goes to prison. Probably minimum security. 3 to 5 years if the judge is lenient. And after? She'll try to rebuild. She'll tell people she was misunderstood. She'll find someone to blame. You? Probably. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Does that bother you? I watched Olivia sink a 3-pointer. Watched Nathan laugh. Watched them be kids again. No, I said, because the strongest revenge isn't making someone hurt the way they hurt you. What is it? Becoming someone who no longer needs the people who once had power over you. Sophia squeezed my hand. We're free, she said. And for the first time in 3 years, she was right. The investigation that followed was quiet but thorough. Forensic accountants traced every diverted dollar, every forged signature, every carefully constructed lie. And when my mother's lawyer called 3 weeks later begging to settle, Richard replied with 2 words that ended 15 years of control in a single breath. Too late.
I'm glad my sister slept with my boyfriend. I sat at the dining table pushing food around my plate while my sister Christy talked about herself for the 3rd time that hour. Christy had this way of making every dinner feel like her personal TED Talk. She examined her manicured nails while she spoke, tilting her hand to catch the light like she was admiring a diamond ring that wasn't there. My boyfriend Leon sat next to me scrolling through his phone under the table. Lately, he'd been checking out mentally while I sat right next to him. Christy's boyfriend Mason sat across from me, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of tired expression that told me he'd heard whatever she was about to say at least 10 times before. "So I've been thinking," Christy said. She looked around at all of us like she was about to deliver a keynote speech. "I have this idea. It's kind of crazy, but hear me out." Mason muttered, "Here we go," under his breath, and Christy shot him a look that could curdle milk. He didn't flinch, just leaned back in his chair and waited. I'd always thought Mason was quiet because he was boring. Now I was starting to think he was quiet because he'd learned that speaking up around Christy was pointless. "I think you and I should swap boyfriends," Christy announced. I blinked, then laughed out loud because there was no way she was serious. I looked at Leon expecting him to be laughing too. He wasn't. He had finally looked up from his phone and was watching Christy with more interest than he'd shown me in months. "I'm serious," Christy continued. She smiled the way she always did when she wanted something, the one that made her look sweet, but felt like a threat. "Think about it. Mason is so boring. No offense, babe." She waved her hand in Mason's direction without actually looking at him. He never wants to do anything spontaneous. He just wants to stay home and watch movies and cook dinner. It's like dating a retirement home. Mason snorted quietly. "Better than dating a tornado that destroys everything and calls it excitement," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath it. Christy ignored him completely, like she hadn't even heard him speak. "And Leon?" Christy said, leaning forward with her chin in her hand. "He's adventurous. He's fun. He's always down to try new things. I just feel like we'd be way more compatible. It makes sense if you think about it." I stared at her. "You're insane," I said flatly. "I'm practical," she replied. "Why should we both be stuck in relationships that don't fit when we could just trade? It's not like any of us are married, Bailey." "Christy, that is genuinely the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say. And you once told me you thought the sun and the moon were the same thing." "I was 12, she snapped. "And stop deflecting. I'm offering you an upgrade." She gestured toward Mason like he was a prize on a game show. Mason raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Leon cleared his throat. "I mean," he said slowly, "it's not the worst idea." My whole body went cold. I turned to look at him so fast my neck cracked. "Excuse me?" He shrugged. One of those lazy, careless shrugs that made me want to throw my fork at his face. "What? I'm just saying. Might be fun to try something different. We've been together 2 years, Bailey. Things get stale." "Stale," I repeated. My voice came out flat and hard. "Yeah, don't act like you haven't noticed." I had noticed. I just thought it was something we'd fix together, not something he'd use as an excuse to trade me in for my sister. Christy clapped her hands together. "See? Leon gets it. Come on, Bailey. 1 month. That's all I'm asking. If it doesn't work out, we switch back and forget it ever happened. No harm done." "No," I said. "Why not?" "Because it's crazy. Because you're my sister. Because this isn't a Netflix movie. Pick a reason." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "God, you're so dramatic. It's not that serious. Mason doesn't care." She looked at him expectantly. "Right, babe? Tell her you don't care." Mason looked directly at me. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered behind his eyes. Exhaustion. Maybe amusement. Maybe pity. Whatever makes this dinner end faster. Christy beamed like he'd just proposed. "See?" She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I even drafted a little contract. 1 month minimum. No backing out early. No running to mom and dad. We all agree to give it a real shot. She slid the paper across the table toward me. "Come on, Bailey. Live a little. Unless you're scared Mason won't like you." That was the trap. I saw it the second she said it. Christy had been pushing my buttons since we were kids, and she knew exactly where every single one was located. The smart move was to stand up and leave, to grab Leon and walk out and never speak of this ridiculous idea again. But Leon was already reaching for the pen. "Leon," I said sharply, "don't you dare." He signed his name without hesitation, without even glancing at me, like I wasn't sitting right there, like 2 years meant absolutely nothing. "Relax, babe," he said, sliding the paper to Christy. "It's just a month. Might be good for us. Shake things up. Might be good for us." Like I was the problem. Like our relationship was stale because of something I did wrong. My vision blurred with anger. 2 years I had given him. 2 years of excusing his laziness and his selfishness and his inability to make me feel like a priority. And this was how he repaid me. By signing away our relationship at this dinner table without a second thought. Christy signed next, her signature as dramatic and loopy as her personality. Then Mason signed with a quick scribble, still looking vaguely amused by the whole thing. They all turned to look at me. "Bailey," Christy said sweetly, "poison wrapped in honey. Don't be the only one who ruins this." I should have walked away. I should have told every single one of them to rot. But Leon had signed that paper like he'd been waiting for an escape hatch, and something about that made me refuse to be the pathetic one begging him to stay. I grabbed the pen, signed my name in hard, angry strokes, then threw the pen onto the table so hard it bounced. Christy smiled. That perfect practiced smile that never once reached her cold eyes. "Trust me," she said. "This is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you." She had no idea how right she was. You see, I signed that contract thinking I was the one getting screwed over. My boyfriend wanted out so badly he agreed before I could even say no. And now I was stuck with some stranger my sister called boring. But here's what my sister didn't know when she forced me to sign that paper. Her boring, safe, not exciting enough boyfriend? He was hiding something that was about to flip this entire situation on its head. And the second she found out, she was going to lose her mind. Mason texted me 2 days later asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I stared at the message for a full minute trying to figure out if this was some kind of trap Christy had set up. But the text was simple. No games. Just, "Hey, figured we should actually talk since we're stuck together for a month. Coffee?" I typed back sure, before I could overthink it. We agreed to meet at a cafe halfway between our apartments. Neutral territory. I got there 15 minutes early, ordered a latte I didn't really want just to have something to hold, and grabbed a table in the corner. When Mason walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Every time I'd seen him before, he'd been sitting next to Christy looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Now he walked in wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, hands in his pockets, looking like a completely different person. Relaxed, unburdened. He spotted me and gave a small wave before sitting across from me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he laughed quietly and shook his head. "This is weird, right?" he said. "It's not just me?" "It's extremely weird," I quickly agreed. "I keep waiting for Christy to pop out from behind a plant and tell me this was all some elaborate prank." "That would require her to admit she was wrong about something," Mason said. "So we're safe." I snorted. I couldn't help it. He smiled a little, and I realized I'd never actually seen him smile before. Not once in the entire year Christy had been dating him. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "how are you holding up with the whole Leon situation?" I wrapped my hands around my cup and thought about how to answer that. The honest answer was that I'd spent the last 2 days cycling between rage and humiliation. The polished answer was that I was fine and handling it maturely. I went with honest. "I keep replaying it in my head," I admitted. "The way he just signed that paper without even looking at me." I was already gone in his mind. Mason nodded slowly. "Yeah, that was rough to watch." "Was it obvious?" I asked. "From the outside, I mean. That things were bad between us?" He considered the question for a moment. I don't know if bad is the right word. It was more like he wasn't fully there. Every time I saw you two together, he was either on his phone or looking somewhere else. You'd be talking and he'd be checked out. I noticed because... He stopped himself. "Because what?" "Because Christy does the same thing to me," he said. "Different flavor, but same energy. She's not checked out, she's just waiting for her turn to talk. Every conversation is just her waiting for an opening to bring it back to herself." "The TED Talk thing," I said. "Exactly. I used to think maybe I was boring. She told me I was boring so many times I started to believe it. But then I realized she called everything boring that wasn't directly about her. A movie she didn't pick? Boring. A restaurant that wasn't Instagram-worthy? Boring. Me wanting to spend a night cooking dinner instead of going to some overpriced club? Boring. She called you a retirement home at dinner. That's a new one, actually. Usually it's grandpa or old man or my personal favorite. Why are you so obsessed with being comfortable?" He said the last part in a pitch-perfect imitation of Christy's voice, and I laughed harder than I meant to. "She's exhausting," I said. "I love her because she's my sister, but God, she's exhausting." "She's a black hole," Mason said. "Everything gets sucked into her orbit. Your time, your energy, your money." I spent $800 on a purse for her birthday, and she returned it because it wasn't the right shade of beige. $800? How the hell could he buy that and not bat an eye? What did he do for work? I was definitely going to ask after he finished ranting about my sister. She showed me the exact one she wanted. I bought it. Apparently there's a difference between sand and oatmeal, and I should have known that. I shook my head in disbelief. Leon forgot my birthday last year. Just completely forgot. I reminded him the week before and the day before, and he still forgot. Then he got mad at me for being upset because birthdays aren't that serious. Christy made me throw her a surprise party and then got mad that I invited her friends instead of people who would make her look better. Mason said. "I still don't know what that means." "It means she wanted hot friends for photos," I said. "Her friends are hot. Not hot enough, apparently." We both laughed and something changed between us. The awkwardness melted away, and suddenly we were just two people who had been through the same war comparing scars. "Can I be honest with you?" Mason asked. "Please." When Christy brought up this whole swap thing, I wasn't surprised. I was relieved. I've been trying to find an exit for months, but every time I brought up breaking up, she'd cry or threaten to tell everyone I was emotionally abusive or say she'd hurt herself. I was trapped. My stomach turned. "Mason, that's manipulation." "Yeah, I know. But when you're in it, you don't see it clearly. You just feel guilty all the time and you don't know why." He ran a hand through his hair. "Anyway, I signed that contract because it was the first door she'd opened willingly. Even if it's only a month, it's a month where I don't have to pretend anymore." I understood that more than I wanted to admit. Leon made me feel like I was asking for too much, I said quietly. Somehow wanting him to pay attention to me was needy. He made it feel like expecting him to remember things was demanding. I kept shrinking myself to fit into whatever space he left for me, and it was never enough. We both picked wrong, Mason said. We really did. He smiled again. That small, quiet smile that made his whole face soften. Well, silver lining, at least we're stuck with each other now instead of them. Is that a silver lining? I guess we'll find out. I smiled back. For the first time since that disaster of a dinner, I felt something other than anger. I felt seen. Hey, random question, I said. What do you do for work? I realized I don't actually know anything about you. Christy never talked about you unless she was complaining. Mason hesitated. Something flickered across his face. Not quite discomfort. More like he was deciding how much to share. I actually just quit my job, he said. About 3 weeks ago. Oh. I tried to keep my expression neutral. So how did he afford the $800 bag? Was he secretly a trust fund baby? Are you looking for something new or? Not exactly. He took a long sip of his coffee. I quit because I don't really need to work anymore. He paused and laughed awkwardly. This is going to sound insane. I won the lottery. Like actually won. Not like $100. I mean, I won millions. I choked on my latte. Coffee went down the wrong pipe and I spent the next 30 seconds coughing while Mason handed me napkins looking mildly concerned. Sorry, he said. I probably should have led with that. You probably should have, I wheezed. Millions? Yeah. Millions. Plural. Yeah. And Christy doesn't know? Nobody knows. I haven't told anyone. I didn't even tell Christy because he stopped and looked at me like he was waiting for me to connect the dots. I connected them instantly. Because she'd never let you go. Because she'd never let me go, he confirmed. She'd suddenly love everything about me. The staying home, the cooking, the comfortable, quiet life. All of it would become perfect the second she found out there was money attached. I sat back in my chair and stared at him. This man my sister had thrown away because he wasn't exciting enough. This man she called boring and safe and compared to a retirement home. He was a millionaire and she had absolutely no idea. She's going to lose her mind, I said. Mason's jaw tightened. Yeah, he said quietly. I know. A millionaire. This man my sister threw away because he wasn't exciting enough had just won millions of dollars. I knew my sister better than anyone. I knew exactly what she was like when she didn't get what she wanted. But Christy not getting something she never knew existed? That was one thing. Christy finding out she had it and gave it away? That was going to be nuclear. The only question was how long until she found out. And honestly, it didn't take long at all. Mason called his mom a week later to tell her the mortgage was paid off. I was sitting next to him on his couch when he made the call, and I watched his whole face light up as she cried happy tears on the other end. It was one of the most genuine moments I'd ever witnessed. What neither of us realized was that Christy had shown up unannounced again, still using the key she refused to give back. She was standing in the hallway when she heard him say, "It's done, Mom. The whole thing. You and Dad never have to worry about the house again." Then we heard someone screaming like a banshee. It was Christy. "How?" Christy shrieked, storming into the living room like a tornado in designer heels. "How did you pay off a mortgage, Mason? That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where did you get that kind of money?" Mason's face went pale. He ended the call with his mom and stood up slowly. "Christy, you need to leave. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell is going on," she screamed. Her eyes were wild, darting between me and Mason like she was trying to solve a puzzle that would ruin her life. "You work a normal job. You drive a 10-year-old car. You told me you couldn't afford to take me to Cabo for my birthday. And now you're paying off mortgages? It's none of your business," Mason said. His voice was calm, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. "We're not together anymore. Remember? You made sure of that." Christy's head snapped toward me. "You!" she hissed. "You knew. You knew this whole time, didn't you? That's why you agreed to sign that contract so easily. You knew he had money and you played me." I scoffed. "Are you hearing yourself right now? You proposed the swap. You wrote the contract. You forced everyone to sign. I didn't even want to be part of this ridiculous situation, but you and Leon made that choice for me. There's no way this is a coincidence," Christy insisted. Her voice was getting higher and more unhinged with every word. "You must have found out somehow. Maybe you went through his stuff. Maybe you hacked his bank account. I don't know how, but you knew and you stole him from me." "I didn't steal anyone," I shot back. "You threw him away. You literally handed him to me on a silver platter because you wanted my neglectful, checked-out boyfriend instead. That was your choice, Christy. No one made you do that." "I didn't have all the information," she screamed. If you had known he was rich, you would have pretended to love him," I finished. "That's exactly why he didn't tell you. He knew you'd only want him for his money. And look at you right now, proving him right." Christy's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. She looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. "This isn't fair," she wailed. "I deserve to know these things. We were together for a year. You should have told me." "Why?" Mason asked quietly. So you could suddenly find me interesting? So you could pretend the staying home and cooking and comfortable life wasn't boring anymore? I know exactly how that conversation would have gone, Christy. You would have loved everything about me the second you found out there was money attached. And that's exactly why I never told you. Christy opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For once in her life, she had nothing to say. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls from my mother. When I finally answered, she told me Christy had called an emergency family meeting and I needed to come home right now. No excuses. I walked into my parents' living room an hour later to find Christy already in position. She was curled up on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, tissues scattered around her, eyes red and puffy from what I assumed was strategically timed crying. My mom sat next to her, rubbing her back. My dad stood by the fireplace looking uncomfortable. Bailey, my mom said in that soft, disappointed voice she reserved for moments when she thought I'd done something wrong. We need to talk about this situation with Mason. Let me guess, I said flatly. Christy told you her version and now I'm the bad guy. No one said that, my mom said. Your sister is hurting. Christy let out a theatrical sob. I just want things to go back to normal, she whimpered. I made a mistake. I admit it. I should never have suggested the swap. But Bailey is rubbing it in my face and refusing to switch back, and it's not fair. A mistake, I repeated. You planned this for weeks. You drafted an actual contract. You brought a pen to dinner, Christy. I didn't know what I was giving up, Christy wailed. He kept things from me. He hid who he really was. How was I supposed to make a fair decision without all the information? So now it's his fault you treated him like garbage? I asked. He didn't owe you his bank statements. You were supposed to love him, not treat him like a wallet. My dad cleared his throat. Bailey, maybe your sister has a point. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Why don't you just end it early and let everyone move on? She hasn't stopped crying. She's crying because she missed out on millions, I said. Not because she lost some great love. If Mason was still broke, she'd be at brunch right now posting selfies with Leon. That's not fair, Christy insisted. You don't know what's in my heart. I had something real with Mason and I didn't see it. Is that what you want me to say? Fine. I was blind. I took him for granted. But I see it now. You see his wallet? I said. That's not the same thing. My mom sighed. Bailey, please. Just consider ending this early. For the family's sake. I looked at my parents. At my sister. At the perfectly orchestrated intervention designed to guilt me into giving Christy what she wanted. And I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. No, I said. The contract says 1 month minimum. No backing out early. No running to mom and dad. I looked directly at Christy. Those were your rules. You wrote them specifically so I couldn't escape when things got hard. Well, guess what? Now you can't escape either. You want to be with Leon so badly? Go be with him. Leave me and Mason alone. I walked out before anyone could respond. 2 days later, Mason showed up at my apartment looking exhausted. He dropped onto my couch and pulled out his phone without saying a word. You need to see this, he said, handing it to me. I scrolled through the messages from Christy. There were dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please give me another chance. I miss you so much. I miss your cooking. I miss your hugs. I miss everything about you. I'll change. I promise. I'll stay home every night. I'll watch whatever you want. I'll never complain again. I love you, Mason. I've always loved you. I was just too stupid to see it. I'll cook for you. I'll learn all your favorite recipes. I'll be the girlfriend you always deserved. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Anything. I looked up at Mason. She's offering to cook? That's how you know she's desperate. She once told me she'd rather die than learn how to use a stove, he said flatly. Now she's offering to make me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She's also offered to delete Instagram, stop going to clubs, and quote, be happy with a boring life as long as it's with you. Wow, I said. She really wants that money. He took his phone back and tossed it on the coffee table. I'm not responding. I'm done. What are you going to do? He looked at me and something in his expression made my chest tighten. Stay right here, he said, with someone who actually sees me. She begged. She cried. She dragged our parents into it. She blew up his phone with messages saying things she never said once during their entire relationship. Nothing worked. The contract she created to trap me was now the thing keeping her locked out. But if you think my sister just gave up after that, you don't know her at all. When begging doesn't work, she switches tactics. And what she did next almost destroyed everything I was building with Mason. The next 2 weeks with Mason were the happiest I'd been in years. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural in a way my relationship with Leon never had. Mason cooked dinner while I sat on his kitchen counter and we talked about everything and nothing. He remembered that I liked my eggs over medium, and that I hated cilantro, and that I always needed a glass of water on my nightstand before bed. Small things. Things Leon never bothered to learn in 2 years. One night we stayed up until 3 a.m. watching terrible horror movies and making fun of the bad acting. Another night, he taught me how to make his grandmother's pasta recipe and didn't get frustrated when I overcooked the noodles twice. He laughed and said, "Third time's the charm." And it was. We ate that pasta on his living room floor because neither of us wanted to move to the table, and it was the best meal I'd ever had. "You know what I like about you?" Mason said one night while we were lying on his couch, my head on his shoulder, some cooking show playing in the background that neither of us were watching. "My devastating wit and charm," I offered. He smiled. "You don't perform. You just exist. You're not trying to be anything other than exactly who you are. Being with you feels like I can finally breathe." My chest tightened in the best way. "I don't think anyone's ever said that to me before." "Then no one's been paying attention," he said quietly. He shifted so he could look at me properly. "I mean it, Bailey. You're funny and sharp and you don't pretend to be someone you're not. That's rare. That matters." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to someone seeing me like that. Wasn't used to being enough exactly as I was. "You matter too," I finally said. "Just so you know. You're not boring or safe or whatever other stupid words people have used. You're steady. You're kind. You remember things. You show up." I paused. "That's everything." Mason's expression softened in a way that made my heart stutter. I kissed him for the first time that night. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. Christy must have sensed that something had changed because that's when the sabotage started. Our first real date was at a small Portuguese restaurant Mason loved. We were halfway through our appetizers when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Oh my God, what a coincidence," Christy said, appearing at our table like she'd appeared from thin air. She was dressed to kill, full makeup, heels that could double as weapons. "I didn't know you two would be here. Mind if I join?" "Yes," I said flatly. "We mind." She ignored me and pulled up a chair anyway, positioning herself right between us. "So how's it going?" she asked, eyes fixed on Mason. "Getting to know each other? Taking things slow, I hope. You really shouldn't rush into anything serious. Rebound relationships never work out." "This isn't a rebound," Mason said. His voice was calm, but I could see his jaw tightening. "And you weren't invited, Christy. I'm just looking out for both of you," she said sweetly. "Bailey doesn't have the best track record with relationships, and I don't want you to get hurt, Mason. You deserve someone who's going to stick around." "Like you stuck around?" I asked. "When you traded him for someone more exciting?" Christy's smile flickered but didn't drop. "I made a mistake. I've admitted that. But Bailey rushing into something with you isn't going to fix anything. She's just using you to get back at me." Mason stood up and dropped cash on the table. "We're leaving," he said, reaching for my hand. "Don't follow us." We walked out and left Christy sitting alone at the table. But that wasn't the end of it. She showed up at the next date too. And the one after that. Coffee shop. Movie theater. A bookstore where Mason wanted to show me his favorite section. Every single time she appeared out of nowhere with some excuse about coincidence or concern. Every single time she found a way to mention that I was moving too fast, or that Mason deserved better, or that rebound relationships were doomed to fail. When the direct sabotage didn't work, she switched to a different approach. Suddenly, every family member I had was texting me with concerns. My aunt wanted to know if it was true that I'd manipulated Christy into the swap. My cousin asked why I was being so cruel to my sister during her time of need. My mom called 3 times in 1 week to tell me that Christy was barely eating and couldn't stop crying, and didn't I feel any guilt at all? "She's telling everyone I planned this," I told Mason one night, scrolling through yet another concerned text from a relative I barely talked to. "She's saying I knew about the money and I tricked her into the swap so I could steal you." "That's insane," Mason said. "You didn't even want to sign the contract." "She's rewriting history," I said. "And everyone's believing her because she's Christy. She's the pretty one, the charming one, the one who always gets what she wants. And I'm just Bailey, the difficult one who ruins everything." Mason took my phone out of my hands and set it face down on the table. "You're not the difficult one," he said firmly. "You're the only one in your family who sees her clearly. That doesn't make you difficult. It makes you honest." Christy called me that night. I don't know why I answered. Maybe I was hoping she'd finally say something real. Something that wasn't manipulation or guilt or strategy. "You're really doing this," she said. Her voice was cold, controlled, no more theatrical crying. "You're really choosing a man over your own sister." "I'm not choosing anyone over you," I said. "You did this, Christy. All of it. The swap, the contract, everything that's happening right now is because of choices you made." "He was mine," she hissed. "For a whole year he was mine, and you just swooped in and took him the second you saw an opportunity. You threw him away," I said for the 100th time. "You literally handed him to me and told me to sign a contract saying I'd keep him for a month. Now you're mad that I actually like him? That's not my fault, Christy. That's yours." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're going to regret this," she said. "I'm your sister Bailey. Blood. And you're throwing that away for some guy you've known for mere weeks." "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "You are. You've been throwing things away your whole life because you always think something better is coming. Well, guess what? Mason was the something better. And you gave him up. I hung up before she could respond. Mason was watching me when I set my phone down. Your sister is exhausting, he said quietly. I laughed even though nothing was funny. Yeah, I said. She really is. Christy crashed our dates. She told our family I manipulated her. She tried to make me choose between her and him like I was the villain in this story she created. And every single time she failed. He saw right through her. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd finally run out of moves. Then she went quiet. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. And that silence? That terrified me more than anything she'd done before because Christy doesn't go silent. She doesn't just give up. A week passed with nothing. No ambushed dates, no family members texting me with concern, no hysterical voicemails at 2 a.m. My phone stayed quiet, and it made me more anxious than all the chaos combined. Maybe she's finally done, Mason said one night while we were cooking dinner together. Maybe she realized it wasn't working and moved on. You don't know Christy, I said, stirring the sauce with more force than necessary. She doesn't move on. She regroups. But days kept passing and still nothing. I started to wonder if maybe I was wrong. Maybe she really had exhausted herself. Maybe even Christy had a limit. Then she texted me. It wasn't a paragraph of guilt or manipulation. Just 6 words. Can we talk? Coffee tomorrow? I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. Fine. 2 p.m. I told Mason about it that night and he offered to come with me. I said no. Whatever this was, I needed to face it alone. Christy was already at the coffee shop when I arrived. She was sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea in front of her. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked almost normal, almost human. It was unsettling. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. Her voice was calm. What do you want, Christy? She took a slow sip of her tea and set the cup down carefully. I wanted to apologize for everything. For showing up at your dates, the family stuff, the texts to Mason, all of it. I was out of line and I'm sorry. I waited for the catch, the manipulation hidden inside the apology. But she just sat there looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Acceptance. I've had time to think, she continued, and I've made peace with how things are. You and Mason are together. The contract will be over soon. Whatever happens after that happens. She shrugged like it didn't matter. I'm done fighting. Just like that, I said slowly. You're done. Just like that. She smiled, but it wasn't her usual sharp smile. It was softer, almost sad. Enjoy him while you can, Bailey. You two seem happy. And when the month is over, we'll figure out where everyone stands. She tilted her head slightly. Maybe Mason and I will work things out. Maybe we won't. But I'm not going to keep making myself crazy over it. Something about the way she said, enjoy him while you can, made my stomach turn, as if she knew something I didn't. I had a feeling she was already counting down to something. Okay, I said carefully. Thanks for the apology. Of course. She stood up and grabbed her purse. I'll see you around, Bailey. Tell Mason I said hi. She walked out and I sat there for a long time trying to figure out why her being calm scared me more than her being unhinged. Things were finally quiet. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was waiting for a bomb to go off. Christy doesn't lose gracefully. She doesn't lose at all. So when she suddenly acted like none of it mattered anymore, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Then my phone rang at 2 a.m. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. And what she told me next? It changed everything for everyone involved. My phone rang annoyingly on the nightstand next to me in the middle of the night. I sat up in bed and quickly answered the phone knowing nothing good happens after 2 a.m. It was Christy calling. Bailey. She choked out between sobs. Bailey, I messed up. I messed up so bad. This wasn't her theatrical crying. This was different. Raw and ugly and gasping. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and uncontrollable. Christy, slow down, I said. What happened? Are you hurt? I slept with him, she wailed. I slept with Leon. The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. You what? I know, she sobbed. I know. I'm sorry. I was angry and hurt, and he kept texting me saying how much he missed having someone who appreciated him, and I just wanted to feel wanted, and it happened, and I'm so sorry, Bailey. My brain was still trying to process what she was saying. Christy slept with Leon. Even I hadn't slept with Mason. When? I demanded. When did this happen? A few days ago, she whispered. But that's not why I'm calling. Bailey, there's something else. Something worse. Worse than my sister sleeping with my ex-boyfriend? I couldn't imagine what could possibly be worse than that. He told me after, Christy said, her voice cracking on every word. After we slept together, he told me he has something. An STD. He said he found out a few weeks ago, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he was embarrassed. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of my mattress to steady myself. He has what? I don't know exactly what, Christy cried. He wouldn't give me details. He just said I needed to get tested and that he was sorry. He said it like it was nothing, Bailey. Like he hadn't just ruined my entire life. My stomach dropped through the floor. 2 days. Leon and I had slept together 2 days before the swap. I remembered it clearly because it had felt like a last attempt to fix something that was already broken. I thought maybe if we reconnected physically, things would get better. They didn't. And now that night might have cost me everything. Christy, I said slowly, my voice shaking. If Leon has something and he found out a few weeks ago, that means he had it when we were together. I slept with him 2 days before the swap. The line went silent except for Christy's ragged breathing. I don't think she'd even considered that. She'd been so focused on her own crisis that she hadn't connected the dots to mine. Oh God, she whispered. Oh God, Bailey, I didn't even think. No, you didn't, I snapped. You never do. I hung up and immediately called Mason. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy with sleep. Bailey, what's wrong? I told him everything. The words tumbled out in a rush, and by the end of it, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I'm coming over, he said. Don't move. He was at my apartment in 15 minutes. I opened the door and he pulled me into a hug without saying a word. We stood there in my doorway for what felt like forever while I tried to remember how to breathe. We need to get tested, I finally said into his chest. Both of us. If I have something and we've been together. Hey, Mason said, pulling back to look at me. I haven't slept with anyone else. So whatever's happening, I'm not worried about me. He cupped my face in his hands. I'm worried about you. And we're going to figure this out together, okay? I nodded even though nothing felt okay. We were at the clinic the second it opened. Christy was already in the parking lot pacing back and forth with mascara streaked down her face. Leon pulled up 5 minutes later looking annoyed like he'd been dragged out of bed for something inconvenient. This is ridiculous, Leon muttered as we all walked inside. I told you it's probably nothing serious. You're all overreacting. Overreacting? Christy shrieked. Several people in the waiting room turned to stare. You told me after we slept together, Leon. After. That's not overreacting. That's attempted murder. That's not what attempted murder means, Leon said flatly. I don't care what it means, Christy screamed. You should have told me before. What kind of person does that? The kind who didn't want to have this exact conversation, Leon shot back. Look, I'm not the villain here. I found out and I told people. That's more than a lot of guys would do. You want a medal for the bare minimum? I asked. You had something and you kept sleeping with people anyway. That's not honesty, Leon. That's recklessness. I didn't keep sleeping with people, he snapped. I slept with Christy one time after I found out, and I told her right after. Right after isn't before, Christy yelled. Right after doesn't protect anyone. A nurse appeared and called Leon's name first. He stood up and shot all of us a look of pure irritation. You know what? I'm the one who has to live with this, not you. So maybe save the judgment until you get your own results. He disappeared down the hallway, and Christy immediately burst into fresh tears. Mason put his arm around me and I leaned into him, trying to block out the sound of my sister's sobbing. They called my name next. The nurse led me to a small room with lighting that made everything feel clinical and cold. She asked me questions about my intimacy history, and I answered them with a detached numbness that didn't feel like my own voice. She took blood and handed me a cup for a urine sample and told me results would take 48 to 72 hours. Is there anything else I should know? I asked before she left. She looked at me with practiced sympathy. Try not to spiral before you have answers. I know that's easier said than done, but worrying won't change the results. I walked out of that room feeling like I was carrying a time bomb inside my own body. Mason went in after me even though he insisted he wasn't worried. For solidarity, he said. Christy went last and came out looking like she'd aged 10 years and 15 minutes. The four of us stood in the parking lot afterward in the most awkward silence of my entire life. Leon leaned against his car with his arms crossed, looking defensive. Christy kept checking her phone like the results might magically appear early. Mason held my hand and said nothing. This is your fault. Christy finally spat at Leon. All of this. If you had just been honest from the beginning, if you hadn't pushed for this stupid swap, none of us would be here. Leon shot back. You wanted excitement, Christy. Well, congratulations. This exciting enough for you? Don't you dare blame me for your disease, Christy screamed. It's not a disease, it's a condition, Leon yelled. And I got it from someone else, so technically I'm a victim too. You're a victim? I yelled. That's your takeaway from this. Forget it, Leon said, throwing his hands up. I'm done. Call me when you all decide to stop treating me like a criminal. He got in his car and drove off. Christy collapsed against her own car and started crying again. Mason squeezed my hand. 48 hours, he said quietly. We just have to get through 48 hours. I looked at my sister sobbing in the parking lot, at the empty space where Leon's car had been, at the clinic behind us where our futures were now sitting in vials waiting to be analyzed. 48 hours. It might as well have been a lifetime. Mason stayed with me the whole time even though he had nothing to worry about. He hadn't been with anyone. I had. 2 days before the swap, I'd slept with a man who couldn't even warn me what he was carrying. When the clinic called, I answered on the first ring. They had all 4 results ready, and only one of us was going to walk away destroyed. The clinic called 48 hours later. I was sitting on Mason's couch pretending to watch TV when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My heart stopped. I answered before the second ring. "Hi, this is Bailey," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "Miss Holmes, this is Dr. Warren from the clinic. Your results are in. Are you able to come in this afternoon to discuss them? Can you just tell me over the phone?" I asked. "Please, I can't wait any longer." There was a pause. Then she said, "Your results came back negative. You're clear." The air rushed out of my lungs. I doubled over on the couch and tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. Mason was next to me instantly, hands on my shoulders, panic in his eyes. "Bailey, what's wrong? What did they say?" I couldn't speak. I just gave him a thumbs up through my sobbing and watched the terror on his face melt into relief. He pulled me into his chest and held me while I cried. "Thank you." I choked into the phone. "Thank you so much." I hung up and we sat there in silence for a long moment. Then Mason's phone rang. He answered it with shaking hands, even though we both knew he had nothing to worry about. He'd gone to get tested for solidarity, not necessity. But I watched his face anyway as he listened. He nodded once, said, "Okay, thank you," then hung up. "Negative," he confirmed. Not that there was any doubt. I laughed through my tears. "I know. I just needed to hear it." We had maybe 10 minutes of peace before my phone buzzed again. A text from Christy. "Results are in. Mom and Dad's house. Now." She didn't say what her results were. Mason drove. I stared out the window the whole way, trying to figure out how I was supposed to feel. My sister had spent weeks making my life miserable. She'd sabotaged my dates. She'd turned my family against me. She'd slept with my ex-boyfriend. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. But mostly, I just felt hollow. Leon's car was already in the driveway when we arrived. Christy's was parked crookedly on the street like she'd barely stopped before jumping out. We could hear raised voices before we even reached the front door. Inside was chaos. Christy stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed tight against her chest. She wasn't crying yet, but her eyes were red and swollen like she had been recently. Leon sat on the far end of the couch looking defensive and small. My parents hovered near the kitchen doorway, clearly lost. "Finally," Christy said when she saw me. "Now everyone's here." "What's going on?" my mom asked. "Christy wouldn't tell us anything until you arrived." Christy took a shaky breath. "I wanted everyone to hear this together." She looked at Leon with pure venom. "Tell them. Tell them what you told me 3 weeks ago and then decided to keep secret." Leon's jaw tightened. "I already told you I'm sorry. I don't know what else you want from me." "I want you to say it," Christy screamed. "Out loud, to everyone, so they all know exactly what kind of person you are." The room went silent. Leon looked around at all of us, then dropped his head. "I have an STD, he said quietly. "I found out about a month ago. I should have told people sooner. I didn't." My mother gasped. My father's face went pale. Mason squeezed my hand. "Bailey," my mom said, turning to me with terror in her eyes. Are you? "I'm negative," I said quickly. "I got my results today. I'm clear." Relief flooded her face, then confusion. "But if Leon has something and you two were together." "We got lucky," I said. Or I did anyway. The implication hung in the air. Everyone slowly turned to look at Christy. She laughed bitterly. It was the kind of laugh that comes right before someone falls apart. "I'm positive," she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. "I tested positive. Because this piece of garbage knew he had something and slept with me anyway and didn't bother to mention it until after." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Christy," Leon started. I swear I didn't know how serious it was. The doctor said it was manageable and I was still processing and I didn't know how to bring it up. "Manageable?" Christy exploded. "You think that makes it okay? I have to live with this forever, Leon. Every relationship I ever have for the rest of my life is going to start with me explaining that my disgusting, reckless ex-boyfriend infected me because he was too much of a coward, to be honest." "I'm not disgusting," Leon shot back. "I made a mistake. People make mistakes." "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday," Christy screamed. "A mistake is shrinking someone's favorite sweater. This isn't a mistake, Leon. This is my life. And you ruined it because you couldn't handle an uncomfortable conversation." She was shaking now, tears streaming down her face, all the fight draining out of her with every word. "And you know what the worst part is?" she continued, her voice dropping to something broken and raw. "I did this to myself. I had Mason. Sweet, kind, loyal Mason who never would have done something like this to me, who actually cared about me, who turned out to be a millionaire." She laughed again and it sounded like glass breaking. "I had a millionaire who wanted to take care of me and I threw him away for this." She gestured at Leon with disgust. "For a man who couldn't even give me basic human decency." "Christy, I really am sorry," Leon said weakly. "Get out," she whispered. "What? Get out of this house," she screamed with whatever energy she had left. "I don't want to look at you. I don't want to hear your voice. You've done enough damage to last me a lifetime. Literally. Get out." Leon looked around the room hoping someone would defend him. No one did. My father stepped aside and pointed toward the door. Leon grabbed his jacket and left without another word. The door closed behind him and Christy collapsed onto the couch. The screaming was over. What replaced it was worse. Quiet, shattered sobbing. The sound of someone who had finally run out of people to blame. "I ruined everything," she whispered between sobs. "I had the perfect guy and I threw him away because I thought I deserved more. And now look at me." She buried her face in her hands. "Look at what I got instead. I was negative. Mason was negative. Christy wasn't." She completely fell apart in front of everyone, screaming, crying, blaming my ex for ruining her life. And in the middle of her breakdown, the truth finally came out. She told us exactly why she pushed for the swap in the first place. What she said next made everything make sense. And honestly, it made me feel nothing for her at all. The room was quiet except for Christy's sobbing. My parents stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort her or keep their distance. Mason stayed close to me, his hand steady on my back. I watched my sister fall apart and waited to feel something. Sympathy, anger, satisfaction, anything. But there was nothing, just emptiness. "Christy," my mom finally said softly, stepping toward the couch. "Honey, it's going to be okay. We'll figure this out together. These things are manageable now. Medicine has come so far. You don't understand," Christy choked out. "None of you understand. Then help us understand," my dad said. His voice was tired, defeated. "Explain to us how we got here." Christy lifted her head from her hands. Her face was swollen and blotchy. Mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. She looked at me and something shifted in her expression. Guilt. Real, genuine guilt that I'd never seen on her face before. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "All of you, but especially Bailey." My stomach tightened. "What?" She took a shaky breath. "The swap wasn't random. It wasn't some crazy idea I came up with at dinner. I'd been planning it for weeks." The words hung in the air. I stared at her, not comprehending. "What do you mean you'd been planning it?" "Leon and I," she started, then stopped, swallowed hard, started again. "Leon and I had been talking, before the swap, for about a month." My blood turned to ice. "Talking how?" "Texting mostly. Sometimes calls when you weren't around." She couldn't meet my eyes. "It started innocent. He reached out to complain about your relationship and I listened. Then it became flirting. Then it became more." Mason's hand tightened on my back. My mother made a small wounded sound. My father's face hardened into something I'd never seen before. "You were pursuing my boyfriend," I said slowly, while I was still with him. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Christy said desperately. "It just did. And then I realized I wanted him, really wanted him, but I couldn't just steal my sister's boyfriend. That would make me the villain. So I came up with the swap." The pieces started clicking into place. The contract she'd already had written, the way Leon agreed so quickly, the way she'd pushed and pushed until I signed. "He knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "Leon knew about your plan." Christy nodded miserably. "We talked about it beforehand. He was supposed to act surprised when I brought it up at dinner. We rehearsed it." She laughed bitterly. "He wasn't even that good of an actor. He agreed too fast. I was worried you'd figure it out." I thought about that dinner. The way Leon's eyes had lit up when Christy mentioned the swap. The way he'd signed that contract without hesitation, without even looking at me. I'd thought he was just checked out of our relationship. Turns out he'd already checked into a new one. "The whole thing was a setup," I said. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "You manipulated me into handing over my boyfriend so you could have him without looking like the bad guy." "I'm sorry," Christy sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Bailey. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted—" "You wanted what you wanted." I cut her off. "You've always wanted what you wanted, and you've never cared who you hurt to get it." "That's not true," she cried. "I love you. You're my sister. You don't love anyone but yourself," I said. The words came out calm and cold. "You proved that when you went behind my back with Leon. You proved it again when you tried to sabotage my relationship with Mason. And you're proving it right now by making this about your guilt instead of what you did to me." Christy flinched like I'd slapped her. My parents stood in stunned silence. Mason said nothing, but I could feel his support radiating through his touch. "I thought if I got Leon through the swap, it would be okay," Christy whispered. "I thought we'd be happy together and eventually you'd move on and forgive me. I never imagined it would end like this." "You never imagined there'd be consequences," I corrected her. "That's different." She broke down again, shoulders heaving with sobs. "I ruined everything. I schemed and planned and manipulated everyone, and for what? A man who couldn't even be honest about his own health. A man who gave me a disease and then blamed me for overreacting." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "You got the millionaire who treats you like gold, and I got exactly what I deserved." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The girl who had been my best friend growing up. The woman who had betrayed me in the most calculated way possible. The person who was only sorry because her plan had backfired. "Yeah," I said quietly. "You did." I took Mason's hand and walked toward the door. My mother called after me, but I didn't stop. There was nothing left to say. It was clear Christy wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry her plan didn't work.
So I found out 3 weeks ago that my entire friendship was basically a lie, and I genuinely don't know how to function anymore. I keep going back and forth between wanting to scream and wanting to just lay in bed and not move. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm sure about what happened because I have literal proof now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to tell this from the beginning because the context matters, and I want you guys to understand why this hurts as much as it does. This isn't just about losing a boyfriend. This is about losing someone I genuinely thought was my sister. Mara and I met back in 2019 at this random house party. We were both 22, both kind of awkward at parties, both standing near the snack table pretending to be very interested in the cheese selection. She made some joke about how she was only there for the free food, and I laughed way too hard, and somehow that turned into us exchanging numbers. Within like 2 months, we were inseparable. The kind of friendship where you don't even have to text before showing up at each other's apartments. The kind where you have a drawer of stuff at their place. We did everything together. Holidays when we couldn't go home to family, bad breakups, job stuff, everything. She was there when my mom got sick in 2021 and I had to fly back to help my dad for 3 weeks. She literally took care of my plants and checked my mail and sent me those dumb encouraging memes every single day. When her grandma passed in 2022, I drove 4 hours to be at the funeral even though I had to call out of work and couldn't really afford the gas. That's the kind of friendship this was. 6 years of building something I thought was unbreakable. Then there was Christopher. I met Christopher in January of last year through this group thing some friends organized. Not like a setup or anything, just a bunch of people going bowling, and he happened to be someone's cousin visiting from out of town who ended up moving here permanently like 2 months later. We hit it off immediately. He was funny in that dry, sarcastic way that I love, super close with his family, which I thought was sweet, and just genuinely kind in ways that felt rare. Like he'd remember random things I mentioned weeks later. He'd notice when I was having a bad day before I even said anything. He got along with my friends. I got along with his family. His mom literally told me she was excited to finally have a daughter since she only had sons and Christopher. His sisters treated me like I'd been around forever. Mara liked him too. Or at least I thought she did in the normal way your best friend likes your boyfriend. She'd hang out with us. She'd joke around with him. She'd tell me how lucky I was. Looking back now, obviously I see things differently, but at the time I had zero reason to suspect anything. None. She never flirted with him in front of me, never made any weird comments, never gave me any reason to think she saw him as anything other than her best friend's boyfriend. Her birthday was March 15th. She was turning 28 and wanted to do this whole house party thing at her apartment. Nothing crazy, maybe 30 people, but she put a lot of effort into it. Had this whole theme going, made a playlist, the works. I helped her set up that afternoon. We spent like 4 hours putting up decorations and arranging the furniture and taste testing the jungle juice she made, which was way too strong, but whatever, it was her birthday. The party itself was actually really fun. Christopher came with me, obviously, and we were having a good time. Dancing, talking to people, the normal party stuff. At some point around 11, I think I went to the bathroom and then got pulled into this conversation with some of Mara's coworkers I'd met before. And that conversation went on for like 20 minutes because one of them was going through this whole thing with her landlord and wanted advice. By the time I got back to where I'd left Christopher, he wasn't there anymore, and neither was Mara. I didn't think anything of it. It was her party. She was probably mingling. He was probably getting a drink or talking to someone else. I found him maybe 15 minutes later outside on the little balcony she has, and he seemed totally normal. We stayed at the party until like 1 in the morning and then went back to his place. Normal night. Good night, actually. The next day, Christopher was weird. Like, not weird in an obvious way, but just off, quiet. Texting on his phone a lot and putting it face down after, which he never used to do. He'd just leave his phone wherever, screen up. I asked if he was okay, and he said, yeah, just tired. I believed him, because why wouldn't I? 2 days after the party, he called me while I was at home and said we needed to talk. His voice sounded strange, kind of flat and cold, in a way I'd never heard from him before. I asked what was wrong, and he said he couldn't do this over the phone and could he come over. Obviously, I said yes, even though my stomach was already starting to knot up because nothing good ever follows. We need to talk. When he got to my apartment, he sat down on my couch and wouldn't look at me for the longest time, and then he finally said that someone had told him something at the party and he needed me to be honest with him. I told him, of course. About what? And he asked me point blank if I had slept with Mara's brother, Theodore. I think I actually laughed because it was such an absurd question. Theodore lives in Portugal. He moved there in 2020 for some opportunity through his job and has been there ever since. I've met him exactly twice in the entire 6 years I've known Mara, both times when he came back for holidays. The idea that I slept with him was so ridiculous, I didn't even know how to respond. I told Christopher that Theodore literally lives in another country and asked what the hell he was talking about. And Christopher said that Mara had pulled him aside at the party and told him she felt horrible, but she couldn't keep lying to him anymore, and that she saw me and Theodore together at Christmas and didn't know what to do, and finally decided he deserved to know the truth. I just stared at him. I told him that Theodore wasn't even at the party, that Theodore hadn't been in the country since Christmas when he visited for like 5 days, and that I was with Christopher for literally all of those 5 days except when I was with my own family. I asked him if he seriously believed I cheated on him with my best friend's brother, who I barely know, and who lives on another continent. Christopher said he didn't know what to believe anymore. He said Mara was crying when she told him. She was shaking. She seemed genuinely torn up about it. She gave him specific details about when it supposedly happened, where, what she saw. I was losing my mind at this point. I kept asking what details, what did she say, because whatever she told him was a complete lie and I needed to know what I was defending myself against. He wouldn't tell me exactly what she said, just kept saying she was very specific and very convincing, and why would she make something like this up about her own best friend? That's what he kept coming back to. Why would Mara lie? What would she possibly gain from destroying our relationship if it wasn't true? I told him maybe he should ask her that because I had no freaking idea why she would make this up. But she did make it up. And he was sitting here accusing me of something that literally could not have happened. Because the person I supposedly cheated with wasn't even in the same time zone. He said he needed time to think. That he wasn't accusing me of anything, he was just confused and hurt and didn't know what was real anymore. I asked him to please just think about the logistics here. Theodore was in Portugal. I was with Christopher almost every day over Christmas. When exactly was this cheating supposed to have happened during the 45 minutes I wasn't directly in front of him? He left without really answering. Said he'd call me. The next few days were absolute hell. I called Mara immediately after Christopher left and she didn't answer. I texted her asking what the hell she told Christopher and why. No response. I called again. Nothing. I went to her apartment and knocked for 10 minutes and either she wasn't there or she was ignoring me. I was going insane trying to figure out why my best friend would tell my boyfriend I cheated when I didn't, when the person I supposedly cheated with wasn't even available to cheat with. Christopher and I texted back and forth over those days. He kept saying he was trying to figure out what was true. I kept telling him the truth was that I never cheated and Mara was lying and I didn't know why. I asked if he'd talked to Theodore, if anyone had bothered to verify whether Theodore was even in the country. He said he didn't have Theodore's contact info and didn't feel comfortable asking Mara for it given the circumstances. On day 4 of this nightmare, I finally got Mara on the phone. She picked up and immediately started talking before I could even say anything. Going on about how she was so sorry, and she knew this was hard for me, but she couldn't watch Christopher be deceived anymore, and she hoped someday I could forgive her for telling the truth even though it hurt. I cut her off and told her to stop with the act because we both knew nothing happened with Theodore, and I wanted to know why she was doing this to me. She got quiet for a second and then her voice changed. Harder. She said she saw what she saw and she wasn't going to let me gaslight her into thinking she was crazy. She said she walked in on me and Theodore at Christmas and it was burned into her brain, and the fact that I was trying to deny it and make her look like the liar was honestly disgusting. I asked her how she walked in on something that didn't happen, and she said she wasn't going to sit here and be manipulated, and that maybe I should focus on fixing things with Christopher, instead of attacking the person who had the courage to tell him the truth. She hung up on me. I tried calling back 4 times and she didn't answer. By the end of that week, Christopher told me he thought we should take a break. He said he didn't know who to believe and he needed space to figure things out. I begged him to talk to Theodore directly, to get actual confirmation that Theodore hadn't been anywhere he could have been with me. He said he would try, but I could tell he'd already made up his mind about something. The break became a breakup 3 days later. He texted me. After everything we'd been through together, 14 months of what I thought was a really solid relationship, and he ended it over text saying he couldn't be with someone when there was this much doubt and uncertainty, and he hoped I understood. I didn't understand. I still don't understand. I cried for 2 days straight. I barely ate. I kept replaying every interaction trying to figure out where this came from, why Mara would do this, what I could have possibly done to make her want to destroy my life like this. And then exactly 19 days after the party, I saw it on Instagram. Mara posted a picture of her and Christopher, his arm around her, some caption about finding happiness in unexpected places, and being grateful for people who help you through hard times. Tagged him, tagged the location, some restaurant downtown I'd never even been to. I clicked on his profile and there were more. Pictures of them together. One from what looked like a hike, one from someone's backyard, all within the last 2 weeks. All while he was supposedly taking space to figure out what was true. They were together. Officially, together. She posted him. He posted her. Comments from her friends saying they were so cute together. Comments from people we mutually knew acting like this was normal and fine. I texted Christopher and asked him what the hell was going on. He said he and Mara had gotten close while he was dealing with everything, and one thing led to another. He said she understood what he was going through because she was also losing a friend, and they helped each other through it. He said he was sorry if this hurt me, but he had to follow his heart. Follow his heart. To the girl who lied about me cheating, who made up an entire story about her own brother to break us up, who then swooped in to comfort him and somehow became his girlfriend within 3 weeks. I tried to tell him again that she lied, that this whole thing was a setup, that she invented the Theodore story to steal him from me. He said he didn't want to hear me badmouth Mara anymore and that I should try to move on for my own sake. Then he stopped responding. So here I am. My boyfriend is now dating my ex-best friend. My ex-best friend destroyed 6 years of friendship by telling an impossible lie that somehow worked. And I have literally no way to prove she made it up because the only person who could confirm Theodore wasn't with me is Theodore himself, and I don't have any way to contact him. And even if I did, why would he get involved in this mess? I've been going back and forth on whether to reach out to our mutual friends and tell them what really happened. Part of me wants everyone to know the truth. Part of me is scared they won't believe me either. If Christopher didn't believe me, why would anyone else? Mara's always been the more outgoing one, the one who makes friends easily, the one everyone loves. I'm the quiet one who people know through her. If it comes down to her word against mine, I already know how that goes. The worst part is I still don't fully understand why. Was she always in love with Christopher? Did she decide she wanted him and just made a plan to get him? Did she hate me this whole time and I never saw it? 6 years of friendship and I'm realizing I might never have known her at all. If you made it this far, thank you for reading. I know this was long, but I needed to get it all out somewhere because I feel like I'm going to explode if I keep holding it in. Any advice or even just support would mean a lot right now. Update. A lot of you had questions and theories, and honestly, some of you picked up on things I hadn't even fully processed yet, so I want to give you all an update, because a lot has happened. So after I posted, I spent about 2 days just kind of existing. Not in a dramatic way, I was functioning, going through the motions, but my brain was stuck in this loop of replaying everything over and over. A bunch of you suggested I reach out to mutual friends and tell my side before Mara could spin the narrative, and honestly, I knew you were right, but I was scared. Like, genuinely terrified that everyone would take her side and I'd lose not just my boyfriend and best friend, but my entire social circle. But then I realized that was probably already happening anyway. I started noticing little things on social media. People I thought were my friends liking Mara's post with Christopher. Comments under their pictures from people who definitely knew we'd been together. Nobody reaching out to check on me. It was like I'd already been erased from the story. There's this girl Sydney who I've known for about 4 years. We met through Mara actually, but over time we'd gotten close on our own. We'd grab food sometimes, just the two of us. Text about random stuff, that kind of thing. I considered her a real friend, not just someone I knew through Mara. So I texted her and asked if we could meet up because I needed to talk to someone and I was losing my mind. She agreed, but she was weird about it. Like, her responses were short and she suggested this random taco place pretty far from where we both live, and when I asked why there specifically, she said she just felt like tacos. Looking back, I think she didn't want anyone to see us together, but at the time I was just grateful someone was willing to listen. When we met up, she already had this expression on her face like she was bracing for something uncomfortable. I started telling her what happened, the real version, and I could see her face doing this thing where she clearly wanted to believe me but also wasn't sure she should. I told her about Theodore being in Portugal, about the timing not making any sense, about how Mara wouldn't even talk to me properly before everything exploded. Sydney was quiet for a while and then she said something that really threw me. She said Mara had already talked to basically everyone, and the story she was telling was that I had been cheating on Christopher for months, that Theodore was just the one she happened to catch me with, and that I had apparently confessed to Mara a while back that I wasn't really happy with Christopher and was looking for a way out. I literally had to set my fork down because I couldn't eat anymore. I asked her if she was serious, and she said, yeah, that's what Mara was telling people. That I was the one who wanted out of the relationship, and Theodore was just the final straw, and that Mara felt horrible about eventually developing feelings for Christopher, but that she had always tried to be there for him during this difficult time, and it just happened. The audacity of this woman. The audacity. Not only did she make up a lie about me cheating with her brother who lives across the ocean, she then created an entire backstory where I was apparently unhappy and looking to leave Christopher anyway. She was literally rewriting our entire relationship to make herself look like some kind of innocent bystander who just happened to catch feelings while comforting a broken man. I asked Sydney if she believed that version of events. She hesitated for way too long before saying she didn't know what to believe anymore. She said Mara had been really convincing and really emotional, and that she'd never known Mara to lie about big stuff. I asked her if she'd ever known me to lie about big stuff, and she admitted no, but then said this whole situation was just so messy and she didn't want to take sides. That hurt more than I expected. I told her I wasn't asking her to take sides. I was asking her to consider that maybe the person who ended up dating my boyfriend 3 weeks after breaking us up might have had an ulterior motive. She said she had thought about that, but Mara had addressed it directly. Apparently told everyone she felt terrible about the timing and tried to fight her feelings. But Christopher was just so hurt, and they bonded over their shared pain of both losing me in different ways. Shared pain of losing me? I didn't do anything. I was the one who got lied about and dumped, and now apparently I'm the villain who hurt both of them so badly they had to comfort each other right into a relationship. I left that lunch feeling worse than before. Sydney hugged me and said she was sorry I was going through this and that she hoped the truth would come out eventually, but she clearly wasn't going to be the one pushing for it. She wanted to stay neutral, which basically meant she was going to stay friends with Mara while keeping me at arm's length until this all blew over. Classic. A few days later, I did something probably stupid. I drove to Mara's apartment. I know, some of you are already typing about how I should have just let it go and focused on myself, but I needed answers. I needed to look her in the face and hear her justify this to me directly. Not through Christopher, not through Sydney, directly. She answered the door, and for a second she looked almost scared, like she wasn't expecting me and didn't have her story ready. But then her face shifted into this expression I can only describe as pitying, like she felt sorry for me. She asked what I wanted, and I said I wanted to know why. Just why. After everything we'd been through, 6 years of friendship, why would she make up something like this? She did this heavy sigh thing and said she didn't make anything up. She said she knew what she saw and she was sorry it destroyed my relationship, but she couldn't lie to Christopher just to protect me. I asked her what exactly she saw because I wanted specifics, since apparently she'd been telling everyone all these details. She said she walked into her guest room at Christmas and saw me and Theodore, and that was enough. I told her Theodore wasn't at her apartment that Christmas. He stayed with their parents the whole time because their mom was sick and wanted him close. She paused for just a second, just barely, before saying she remembered it differently. I asked how she could remember it differently when it literally didn't happen, and she just kept insisting she knew what she saw. Then I asked her about the other stuff. The stuff about me being unhappy in my relationship, about me wanting out, about me supposedly confessing things to her. Where did all that come from? She said I used to complain about Christopher sometimes, and she had always wondered if I was really committed to him. I told her everyone complains about their partner sometimes. That doesn't mean they're cheating or want to leave. She got this look on her face like she was done entertaining my questions. She said she understood I was upset and she understood I probably needed someone to blame, but she wasn't going to stand here and let me accuse her of lying when she was the one who had the courage to tell the truth. I told her there was no truth because nothing happened, and I don't know what she thinks she saw, but Theodore was not at her apartment that Christmas, and I was not with him anywhere ever. She started closing the door and said maybe I should focus on figuring out why I felt the need to cheat instead of attacking the people who cared about Christopher enough to be honest with him. I stuck my foot in the door, probably not my best moment, and asked her to just admit it. Just admit she wanted him and made this up to get him. She laughed and said I sounded pathetic and desperate and maybe Christopher was right to leave me. The door closed. I stood there for a good 5 minutes just trying to process. She didn't crack at all. Either she genuinely believes her own lie somehow or she's a way better actress than I ever gave her credit for. Either way, I left with nothing except more confirmation that she was never going to admit what she did. After that confrontation, I kind of spiraled a bit. Not in a dangerous way, just in a can't stop thinking about it way. I started going back through old texts and photos trying to find any sign that Mara had feelings for Christopher before this. Any moment where she looked at him too long or said something weird. I found nothing. She was always perfectly normal, perfectly friendly, perfectly supportive of our relationship. That made it worse somehow. The fact that I couldn't see it coming at all. Either she was playing a really long game or something changed at some point that made her decide she wanted him. But what? What happened that made her go from my best friend to someone who would destroy my life for a guy? Around this time, Mara's cousin Livia started showing up more in my peripheral awareness. I'd met Livia a bunch of times over the years. She was at most of Mara's family things and some of her bigger parties. She's maybe 3 or 4 years younger than us and always seemed like the type who wanted to be included in everything. Not in an annoying way exactly, just very eager to be part of whatever was happening. She'd always been friendly to me, would comment on my photos sometimes, that kind of thing. I noticed she was suddenly in a lot of Mara and Christopher's posts, like in the background of their pictures, commenting heart emojis, posting stories about hanging out with them. It stung seeing it, because it was like everyone had just moved on and accepted this new reality where Mara and Christopher were a couple, and I was apparently the cheating ex who brought this on myself. One night, I was in a really bad headspace, and I ended up going out with Kenzie, this girl I know from way back who isn't connected to any of the Mara drama. We went to this bar we used to go to in college that I hadn't been to in years, just wanted to drink and forget everything for a few hours. We were there maybe 2 hours when Kenzie went to the bathroom, and I was just sitting at the bar messing with my phone. This guy sat down next to me and started chatting me up, and I was politely trying to shut it down when I heard someone say my name from behind me. It was Livia, Mara's cousin. She was clearly pretty drunk, swaying a little, and she had this weird energy like she was excited to see me but also nervous. She told the guy next to me to go away, which he did, and then she sat down in his spot. My first instinct was to get up and leave because I figured anything connected to Mara was just going to hurt me. But Livia grabbed my arm and said wait, she wanted to talk to me. I asked about what, and she said she felt really bad about everything and she knew the whole situation was messed up. I asked her what she meant by messed up. She said she just meant like the whole thing with me and Christopher and Mara. How it all happened. I asked how she thought it happened, and she gave me this look like she was trying to figure out how much to say. Then she said something that made me freeze. She said she knew Mara had been planning this, and she felt weird about it from the beginning, but she didn't think it would actually work. Planning this. I asked her what she meant by planning. She started to answer, but then Kenzie came back from the bathroom and Livia suddenly got all weird and said she had to go find her friends. I tried to stop her and ask more questions, but she was already backing away, saying she probably shouldn't have said anything, and she was really drunk, and she needed to go. I spent the rest of that night losing my mind, planning this. Mara had been planning this. It wasn't some impulsive lie she told at the party. It was premeditated. She deliberately set out to break up my relationship so she could have Christopher. Kenzie asked what happened, and I told her, and she was just as shocked as me. She kept saying, "Oh my God," over and over. We left the bar not long after because I couldn't focus on anything else. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. My mind was racing trying to piece together when this plan started. Who else knew? What exactly Mara had done to set this up? The fact that her own cousin knew about it and felt weird about it from the beginning meant it wasn't just something Mara came up with on her own or in the moment. This was discussed, planned, executed. I texted Sydney the next morning and told her what Livia said. Sydney texted back asking if I was sure Livia said that, if she was drunk, if maybe I misheard. I told her I didn't mishear someone saying my best friend planned to steal my boyfriend. Sydney went quiet after that and didn't respond for hours. When she did finally respond, she said she didn't know what to do with that information. She said Livia was known for being dramatic and maybe she was exaggerating or misremembering or just stirring up trouble because she'd had too much to drink. I asked if she seriously thought Livia would make up something like that, and she said she didn't know, but she also didn't want to accuse Mara of something that serious based on a drunk comment from her younger cousin. So basically, Sydney still didn't fully believe me. Even with Livia literally confirming there was a plan, there was still enough doubt in everyone's mind that Mara got to keep her perfect image. I knew what I had to do. I needed to talk to Livia again, sober this time. I needed to find out exactly what she knew and exactly what Mara's plan was, and get her to actually confirm it in a way nobody could dismiss as drunk rambling. I found Livia on Instagram and sent her a message. Nothing confrontational, just hey, you said something at the bar that I think we need to talk about more. Can we meet up? She left me on red for almost 2 days. Then she finally responded and said she didn't think that was a good idea. She said she was drunk and said more than she should have, and she didn't want to get in the middle of this. I told her she was already in the middle of it by knowing what Mara did and not saying anything. She said it wasn't her place to get involved and she was sorry, but she couldn't help me. I was about to give up when she sent another message maybe an hour later. She said she felt guilty about the whole thing and it had been eating at her, but she was scared of what Mara would do if she found out Livia told me anything. She said Mara could be really mean when she was mad and she didn't want to deal with the family drama. I asked her to please just meet with me once, just tell me what she knew. Even if she never spoke about it again after that, I just needed to know the truth so I could stop feeling like I was going insane. She didn't respond that night. The next morning she texted and said, okay, one time, but I had to promise not to tell anyone she talked to me. I promised. She said she'd meet me at this park near her apartment on Saturday afternoon. That's where I'm at right now. I have a meeting with Livia set up for this weekend. I'm terrified she's going to back out or show up and refuse to tell me anything useful. But I'm also weirdly hopeful for the first time since this all started. Because if Mara really did plan this whole thing, if there's actual evidence of it, then I finally have a way to prove I didn't do what she accused me of. Some of you are probably going to tell me to just move on and forget about all of them. And I get that. I really do. But I can't let Mara get away with this. She stole my boyfriend, destroyed my reputation, and turned all my friends against me based on a lie. A planned, premeditated lie. If Livia knows the details of that plan, I need to hear them. I'll update after Saturday. Please send good vibes or prayers or whatever you believe in because I need Livia to actually show up and actually tell me the truth. After weeks of feeling powerless and crazy, this might be my only chance to finally prove what really happened. Last update. Okay, so Saturday happened and I have a lot to tell you all. This is probably going to be my last update because honestly I'm exhausted and I think I finally have some closure even if it's not the kind I originally wanted. Livia showed up. I was genuinely shocked because I spent all morning convinced she was going to bail. But she was there at the park when I arrived, sitting on a bench looking nervous as hell. She made me promise again that I wouldn't tell Mara she talked to me and I said yes, even though at that point I didn't really care what Mara thought about anything. She started talking and honestly it was worse than I expected. She said Mara had been interested in Christopher since basically the second time she met him, like months into my relationship with him. She never said anything to me obviously, but she would talk to Livia about it. About how Christopher was exactly her type. How she couldn't believe I had found someone like him. How it wasn't fair that I always got the good ones. I asked what she meant by always got the good ones and Livia got uncomfortable and said there had been a guy before Christopher, someone I dated briefly maybe 4 years ago, that Mara had also been interested in. But that relationship ended on its own so Mara never had to do anything. This time though, me and Christopher were serious. Really serious. And Mara apparently couldn't handle watching us be happy anymore. The plan started forming around January. Mara would vent to Livia about how she couldn't stop thinking about Christopher and how she knew it was wrong but she felt like we weren't right for each other anyway. And she would treat him so much better. Livia said she thought it was just venting at first. The way people complain about wanting things they can't have. But then Mara started talking about how she needed to do something about it. The Theodore lie was calculated. She picked her brother specifically because he lived far away and couldn't easily deny it. She figured if she said she saw something at Christmas, it would be her word against mine. And she was confident Christopher would believe her because why would a best friend lie about something like that? She told Livia she was going to do it at her birthday party because there would be alcohol and emotions. And it would seem more believable that she finally broke down and told the truth after holding it in for months. Livia showed me the texts. She actually pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of conversations between her and Mara from January through March. Mara talking about her plan. Mara asking Livia what she thought the best approach was. Mara literally typing out that she was going to tell Christopher she caught me with Theodore and then be there to comfort him after. I sat there reading these messages and I genuinely felt sick. Not in the dramatic way, Just this deep, awful feeling in my stomach, seeing my supposed best friend type out her scheme to destroy my relationship in casual text like she was planning a party. There was one message that really got me. Mara texted Livia like a week before her birthday saying she was nervous but excited, and that she knew Christopher would need time to process, but she was going to be patient and let him come to her naturally. She literally wrote, "He's going to need someone to lean on and I'm going to be right there." I asked Livia why she never warned me, and she said she honestly didn't think Mara would go through with it. She thought it was just talk. And then when it actually happened, she was scared to get involved because Mara was family, and she didn't want to start drama. I wanted to be mad at her, but honestly, I was just grateful she was finally telling me the truth. She let me screenshot everything, every single message, and then she asked me what I was going to do with them. I thought about sending them to Christopher, making him see what Mara really was. But honestly, I realized I didn't even want him back anymore. A man who would believe some story over me without even verifying the most basic facts, who would break up with me over text, who would start dating my best friend 3 weeks later. I didn't want him. Let Mara have him. They deserved each other. But I wanted his family to know. His mom who told me I was like a daughter. His sisters who treated me like I'd always been there. They deserved to know what kind of person was inserting herself into their family. I made a group chat. Added his mom, his 2 sisters Felicia and Viola, who I still had numbers for from when we'd planned surprise things for Christopher. I didn't add Christopher himself. I just sent every single screenshot with a message explaining what happened. That Mara made up the Theodore story to break us up. That she had been planning it for months. That I had proof from her own cousin. Then I turned off my phone and didn't look at it for 6 hours because I couldn't handle waiting for responses. When I finally looked, there were a lot of messages. Felicia had responded first, just a bunch of shocked reactions and questions. Viola said she always thought something was off about how fast Christopher moved on. And his mom. His mom sent this long message about how she was horrified and disgusted, and that she had welcomed Mara into her home and treated her like family, and this whole time Mara was scheming. The best part was what his mom wrote at the end. She said she told Christopher directly that she would never accept that scheming girl as a daughter-in-law, that Mara was not welcome at family dinners anymore, that she couldn't believe he fell for such obvious manipulation. Christopher texted me later that night. First time he'd reached out since everything went down. He wanted to know why I sent those screenshots to his family, saying I had no right to involve them. I told him I had every right to defend myself against lies, and if he had bothered to verify anything Mara told him instead of just believing her, none of this would have happened. He tried to defend himself, saying Mara had been so convincing and he was confused and hurt. I told him I didn't care anymore. He made his choice and now he gets to live with it. With a girlfriend his entire family hates. With a mom who thinks he's an idiot. With sisters who are never going to look at Mara without seeing those screenshots. He asked if we could talk in person and I said no. There was nothing left to talk about. He chose to believe a lie over me and he chose to date the liar. That's on him forever. Last I heard from Felicia, Mara tried to come to a family dinner last week and his mom literally asked her to leave, in front of everyone. Christopher apparently tried to argue, but his mom wasn't having it. Said she refused to break bread with someone who manipulated her son and destroyed an innocent girl's reputation for her own selfish gain. Mara and Christopher are still together as far as I know, but from what I can tell, she's basically banned from his family. His mom won't acknowledge her. His sisters refuse to speak to her. Every family event is awkward because either Mara doesn't come or she comes and gets iced out completely. I don't know if they'll last. Part of me hopes they do, honestly. Let them have each other. Let Christopher spend the rest of his life with a woman his family despises, always wondering in the back of his mind what else she's capable of lying about. Let Mara have the relationship she schemed and lied to get, except without any of the family acceptance she probably fantasized about. Anyway, that's it. That's the end. Sometimes karma takes a while, but when it hits exactly where it hurts most.
My MIL pushed me down the stairs because I refused to name my baby after her. I was 7 months pregnant, standing at the top of my mother-in-law Diane's staircase when she cornered me about baby names. So, are you finally going to tell me what you're naming my granddaughter, or do I have to keep guessing? She had been making little comments like this all night, and I kept dodging because I knew she wasn't going to like the answer. My husband Blake and I had already decided on Rose after my grandmother who raised me while my parents were going through their divorce. Now there was no escaping telling her. We're naming her Rose. She repeated it back to me like the word physically disgusted her. Rose, not Diane? The name means everything to me. I carried Blake for 9 months. She cut me off. I raised him by myself after his father walked out. I gave up everything for that boy, and you can't even give me this one thing? It's not personal, Diane. It's my grandmother's name. Diane laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. Your grandmother. Some woman I never met matters more than the woman who created your husband? That's not what I meant, I stuttered out. Then what do you mean? Because it sounds like you're telling me I don't matter. That 32 years of sacrifice mean nothing to you. Her voice was getting louder, and I made the mistake of saying, let's talk about this later when you've calmed down. Calm down? You're standing in my house telling me my name isn't good enough for your disgusting baby and I need to calm down? She stepped closer and I stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. Just the stairs behind me. You know what I think? I think you've been trying to push me out since the day you met Blake. You want him all to yourself. You want to erase me completely. Diane, that's not true. Please understand where I'm coming from with this. I could feel the sweat beads on my forehead. Then prove it. Change the name. Diane, you can't ask me to do that. Her eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. Wrong answer. Before I knew it, her hand was on my chest and she pushed me hard and I lost my balance and started falling. I grabbed at nothing. My hip cracked against the stairs and my arms wrapped around my belly because my brain could only scream one thing: protect the baby. When I hit the bottom, the wind left my body and I just lay there staring up at 40 frozen faces. Diane was still at the top with her arm extended, and for half a second I saw it. Satisfaction. Like she did exactly what she meant to do. Then it vanished and she came rushing down the stairs sobbing. Oh my God, she slipped. I tried to grab her. Someone called 911. Blake pushed through the crowd and dropped to his knees beside me. Baby, are you okay? Can you move? Is the baby okay? Diane was right behind him, wailing about how scared she was and how she tried to catch me and I couldn't take it anymore. She pushed me, Blake. She pushed me. The crying stopped. Diane stared at me with this wounded animal expression. Blake, do you hear this? Do you hear what she's accusing me of? She grabbed his arm and her voice went high and hysterical. I would never hurt my grandbaby. I tried to catch her. She's confused, Blake. She hit her head. She doesn't know what she's saying. Nobody said anything. Blake looked between us like he was watching his whole world split in half. Mom, just give her some space. Oh my gosh, how is this happening to me? She wailed as she went to sit down on the couch. The ambulance came. Blake rode with me, holding my hand the whole way. He kept asking if I was okay and telling me everything was going to be fine, but he had this look that told me he couldn't figure out which version of the story to believe. At the hospital, they hooked me up to monitors, and after what felt like forever, we got news that the baby was okay. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Blake cried too. He kept whispering, "Thank God," over and over, and I thought, okay, now he believes me. Now he sees what his mom really is. But then he asked me what really happened up there. I told him again. He went quiet for a long time, and my stomach started sinking. She was upset about the name, I know that. But she wouldn't physically hurt you? You probably lost your balance. Blake, she put her hand on my chest and she pushed me. He squeezed my hand like he was trying to comfort me through my own delusion. You're exhausted and you just went through something traumatic. Maybe your brain turned her reaching for you into something else. I could see it in his eyes. He needed this to not be true. He needed his mother to still be the person he thought she was. And I was so tired. The monitors kept beeping and my hip was throbbing and our daughter's heartbeat filled the room and I just wanted it all to stop. So I said maybe it happened fast. Maybe I wasn't totally sure what I felt. Blake's whole body relaxed and he kissed my forehead. Let's just focus on the baby being okay. I let him believe it because I didn't have the fight left in me to force him to see something he was desperate to unsee. That night, I lay awake in the hospital bed with my hand on my belly, replaying it over and over, her palm flat against my chest, the half second of nothing beneath my feet. I knew what I felt, and I knew Diane was at home right now, calling every family member, rehearsing her version until it sounded like the truth. By morning, the story would become something I couldn't recognize anymore. I had maybe 12 hours before her lie became the only thing anyone remembered. By the next morning, Diane's version had already spread. I woke up to 17 text messages from people I'd met maybe twice. Blake's aunt asking if I was feeling better after my fall. His cousin saying she heard I'd been struggling emotionally and hoped I was getting help. Another cousin saying Diane had called her at midnight crying about how worried she was about me and the baby. Not worried that she pushed me. Worried about me. Like I was the problem. I called Blake's aunt because I needed to hear exactly what Diane was saying. Oh, honey, she's just so worried about you. She told me you've been hormonal and erratic this whole pregnancy. That poor woman was sobbing on the phone saying she doesn't know what she did wrong. She said Blake's been struggling with your mood swings for months and she's been trying to support him through it. And then to be accused of something so horrible in her own home? She made a tisking sound. She asked me if I thought you were stable enough to be a mother. She's not trying to be cruel, sweetheart. She's genuinely scared for that baby. I couldn't feel my hands. She said that? That she's scared for my baby? She's just concerned, we all are. You know there's no shame in getting help. I hung up and immediately called my sister Val and rambled on. Listen, Marie, she said sternly when I finished. You need to get Blake's head out of his ass before this baby comes or you're going to be co-parenting with that woman for 18 years. Screenshot every text. Record every conversation. This is only going to get worse. In the moment I was thinking, how worse could this possibly get? I didn't know just how worse it could get. When Blake got home that night, I was ready. We need to talk about what your mother is telling people. He sighed and set his keys down. I already talked to her today. She's really hurt by all this. My jaw actually fell. She's hurt? Blake? She's telling your entire family that I'm mentally unstable. She told your aunt she's worried I'm not fit to be a mother. That's not what she said. She's just worried about you, about the stress you've been under. What exactly did she say to you? He sat down across from me and his whole face softened. She was winning him over. She told me about her childhood. Her mom abandoned her when she was 6. She just left a note and never came back. She grew up feeling like she didn't matter to anyone, like she was invisible. And then she had me, and finally she felt like she existed, like she meant something. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I could see where this was going, and I wanted to scream. She said naming the baby Diane would have meant she finally mattered enough to be remembered. He reached for my hand. She said she feels like you've never respected her place in this family, like you've been trying to push her out since we got engaged. Did she talk about the push at all? She said she would never hurt you. That you know that. That's not an answer. She said she reached for you when you started to fall. She said she's been replaying it in her head over and over, and she doesn't understand how you could think she'd ever hurt her own grandchild. I pulled my hand back from his. So she spent the whole conversation crying about her childhood and never once talked about what she actually did to me. She talked about it. She said she didn't do it. And you believe her. I believe she had a terrible childhood and loves her son and made a mistake in how she reacted to the name thing. But I don't believe she pushed you. I can't believe that. If I believe that, then everything I know about my mother is a lie. There it was. The truth underneath all of it. He couldn't believe me because believing me would break something inside him. And Diane knew that. She'd spent 32 years building herself into the center of his world. The sacrificing mother. The abandoned child who gave everything for her son. She wasn't just denying the push. She was making it impossible for Blake to see the push without destroying his entire foundation. She's telling your family I'm mentally unfit to be a mother. She's just scared. She thinks you're going to take me away from her. The heir left the room. You're defending the woman who almost took our daughter away from us. He stood up and grabbed his keys off the counter. I can't do this tonight. Diane was making a plan, but she had also made a mistake. She thought I'd keep the peace and let this go. What she didn't know was that something changed in me when I hit the bottom of those stairs. She wasn't dealing with the woman who married her son anymore. She was dealing with a mother. And I was done waiting for anyone to believe me. If I wanted the truth to come out, I was going to have to find it myself. Someone at her house saw something. Someone always sees something. Tomorrow I was going to start making calls. The next morning I started making calls. Blake's cousin Jan had been at the party, and she was the only one who hadn't texted me with fake concern or asking if I was getting help. So I figured I could trust her. I sent her a message asking if we could talk, and she called me within 10 minutes. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she said. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know if you wanted to hear from anyone in the family right now. I need to know if anyone saw what happened at the stairs. She went quiet, and I could hear her breathing. I didn't see the push, she finally said. I felt helpless at that. I didn't know how I was going to win this war. But then Jan spoke. But I saw her face right before you fell. Her expression, Marie. She stopped. She didn't look shocked when you went down. She looked satisfied, like she'd done exactly what she meant to do. Then it was gone, and she was rushing down crying. I actually felt relief at that because I saw it too. I wasn't crazy. Would you tell Blake that? She laughed bitterly. He won't believe me. None of them ever do. What do you mean? When I was 16, Diane told everyone I stole $200 from her purse at a family barbecue. I didn't take it, but she was so convincing, crying and shaking and saying she couldn't believe her own niece would do this to her. Jan's voice got tight. My parents believed her. They grounded me the whole summer and made me get a job to pay her back for money I never took. If she'd lied about Jan at 16, lying about me now was nothing to her. She probably still believes I took it to this day. Jan sighed heavily. She decides something happened, and then it becomes real to her. Doesn't matter what actually went down. I felt sick that a person like this was my mother-in-law and grandmother to my future daughter. When Blake got home, I showed him everything. Jan's text about the expression on Diane's face, the story about the money, the warning about her delusion. He read through it all twice, and his face changed in a way I hadn't seen before. Not defensive, not making excuses, shaken. He sat there staring at his phone like he was seeing his mother for the first time. I wanted to feel like I'd won something, but all I felt was scared. If Jan was right about the pattern, then this wasn't going to end with Diane crying on the phone to relatives. This was going to get worse. 2 days later, my phone rang and Diane's name stared back at me. I don't know why I answered. Maybe I thought she was actually going to apologize. Maybe I just didn't want to give her another reason to call me difficult. She skipped the pleasantries altogether and said, I know you've been talking to Jan. My jaw clenched. I know you're digging around, trying to turn my own family against me. I'm just trying to get people to see the truth. The truth? She laughed. The truth is that you fell down the stairs and decided to blame me because you've never liked me. You're trying to steal my son from me, and I won't let that happen. Then her voice got cold and dark. I know things about postpartum depression, Marie. I know how to describe the symptoms. I know exactly what CPS looks for when they get a call about an unstable new mother. I couldn't move for a second. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. You want to keep playing this game? Keep asking questions. Keep turning people against me. And I will make sure you never have a moment alone with that baby. I could hear the smile on her face as she told me, I'll call every agency, I'll talk to every doctor, I'll make sure everyone knows how erratic and paranoid you've been. Blake already told me about your mood swings, your crying, and your obsessive worrying. She hummed low. It paints quite a picture, doesn't it? My hands were shaking, but I didn't cower away. Listen to me, Diane. If you ever threaten me or my daughter again, I'll make sure Blake hears every word you just said. She chuckled condescendingly. Who do you think he's going to believe, sweetheart? His mother who's loved him for 32 years? Or the woman who accused her of trying to hurt her grandbaby? She hung up and the silence filled the room. She'd actually said it out loud. Threatened to call CPS. Threatened to take my baby. And she did it over the phone because she knew I couldn't prove it. No witnesses. No recording. Just her word against mine like always. And if she was already thinking about CPS, then she'd probably already started laying the groundwork. The question wasn't whether Diane was coming for my baby. It was how much of a head start she already had. And that thought terrified me. 2 weeks passed with nothing. No calls, no texts, no Diane showing up at my door with a new threat wrapped in a smile. The silence should have felt like relief, but it just made everything worse. I tried to focus on getting ready for the baby, washing the tiny clothes and folding them into the dresser we'd painted pink, setting up the crib and hanging the little mobile with the stars and moons that played a lullaby when you wound it up. Normal things, safe things, but every creak in the house made me flinch. Every time a car slowed down outside, I'd find myself at the window. Blake said maybe his mom was finally thinking about what she'd done, but I saw him checking his phone constantly, waiting for something he wouldn't admit he was waiting for. At my baby shower, Val made sure it was just my side of the family, no one from Blake's side. But the whole time I kept watching the door, expecting Diane to walk in with that calm smile that means she's about to detonate. Val caught me looking and squeezed my hand and told me things would be okay. I tried to smile, but my face wouldn't let me because I knew this wasn't over. Diane doesn't let things go. She doesn't forgive and she doesn't forget. She just waits. 3 weeks later, I was at my OB appointment, and something felt off the second I walked in. The receptionist, who usually smiled and asked how I was feeling, barely looked at me. She just checked me in and told me to wait without making eye contact. I sat in the waiting room with my hand on my belly trying to figure out what changed. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I noticed one of the nurses glancing at me from behind the desk and looking away when I caught her. By the time they called my name, my stomach was in knots, and it had nothing to do with the baby. The appointment itself was fine. Baby was healthy, heartbeat strong, 2 to 3 weeks until my due date. But when we finished, my doctor asked if she could speak to me privately for a moment. She closed the door and sat down across from me with this careful expression on her face. I need to tell you something and I want you to stay calm. My whole body went cold. Is something wrong with the baby? No. The baby is perfect. This is about something else. She paused like she was choosing her words carefully. We've received several calls over the past 2 weeks from someone claiming to be a concerned family member. They've been asking questions about your mental health history, whether you've shown signs of instability or paranoia during your pregnancy, whether you've had any psychiatric episodes. I couldn't breathe for a second. What did you tell them? Nothing. We don't release patient information to anyone. But I wanted you to know because the calls have been persistent and specific. Whoever this is seems to be trying to build some kind of case. I knew exactly who it was. I didn't even have to guess. I need to put a password on my file. No information goes to anyone including family without that password. My doctor nodded. I was going to suggest the same thing. I'm also documenting these calls in your chart in case you need a record later. I thanked her and walked out of that office with my hands shaking. Diane wasn't just talking anymore. She was making moves. 2 days later, my boss called me into her office. She looked confused and a little uncomfortable. I got a strange call this morning. Someone claiming to be a friend of yours. They asked if you'd seemed erratic or unstable at work lately. They mentioned you were pregnant and suggested someone should check on you. My jaw clenched. Did they leave a name? No. They said they wanted to stay anonymous because they didn't want to upset you. But they were very insistent that I should be watching for warning signs. She looked at me carefully. Is everything okay? Is someone harassing you? I told her it was a family issue, and I was handling it. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. That's what Diane wanted. She didn't need anyone to believe her completely. She just needed to plant seeds, get people asking questions, create a trail of concerned calls so that later if anyone investigated, they'd find a pattern of people expressing worry about my mental state. I called Val on my way home and told her everything. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said she'd been doing some digging. She'd reached out to Blake's aunt, the one who'd asked if I was feeling better after my fall. She told me Diane has been calling her every week crying about you, saying you've been having psychotic episodes, saying she's terrified for her grandbaby. I pulled over because I couldn't drive and hear this at the same time. There's more, Val said. She asked the aunt if she'd be willing to be a character witness. If something happens. Those were her exact words. If something happens. I sat there in my parked car staring at nothing. Diane wasn't just trying to make me look crazy. She was recruiting people, getting witnesses lined up for whatever she was planning. When Blake got home, I sat him down and told him all of it. The calls to my doctor, the call to my work, what his aunt told Val. I watched his face change as I talked. First confusion, then disbelief, then something I'd never seen on him before. Fear. She's trying to take the baby, he said quietly. I didn't say anything. I just let him sit with it. He pulled out his phone and called her. I watched him put it on speaker. She answered on the second ring, all sweet and warm. Hi, honey. I've missed your voice. Mom, have you been calling Marie's doctor? Silence. A long one. Then her voice came back different. Careful. I'm just worried about the baby. You know your wife hasn't been stable. You've told me yourself how emotional and paranoid she's been. Blake hung up. He sat there staring at his phone with his face pale. I realized then what had happened. Blake had been venting to his mother the way he always did, telling her I was tired and emotional and worried about the birth. Normal pregnancy stuff. And Diane had taken every word and turned it into ammunition. She didn't call back. She didn't text. I almost wished she would because the silence was worse. That night, Blake went to check the mail and came back holding a single envelope from his mom. He handed it to me and I opened it. Inside was a piece of paper with neat handwriting. Blue ink. The letters slightly slanted to the right. It said, all you had to do was name her after me. Enjoy these last weeks together. I read it 3 times. My hand started shaking so hard the paper rattled. Blake took it from me and read it, and I watched his face go white. Neither of us said anything for a long time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there with my hand on my belly, feeling my baby's kick and thinking about that note. Diane had walked up to our house, put that envelope in our mailbox with her own hands. While we were inside living our lives, she was right there, close enough to touch our door. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wanted me to know she could get to me whenever she wanted. The birth was 2 weeks away, maybe less. And Diane had made it clear she wasn't going to miss it. I went into labor at 39 weeks on a Friday morning. My water broke in the kitchen while I was making toast, and for a second I just stood there staring at the puddle on the floor, thinking this is it. Blake drove me to the hospital going 20 over the speed limit the whole way. When we got there, Blake reminded the nurses that his mom was not allowed in under any circumstances before I could. Her name is Diane. If she shows up, you call security. Don't talk to her. Don't let her talk to anyone. Just get her out. The nurse looked a little startled by his tone but nodded and made a note. He turned to me and took my face in his hands. She's not getting anywhere near you, I promise. I finally felt supported throughout this whole thing. After the note his mom left, he completely changed his tune and admitted to himself that his mom was a cruel person. 6 hours into labor, I was gripping Blake's hand through contractions that felt like my whole body was being torn apart from the inside. The pain came in waves that made it impossible to think about anything else. I'd squeeze Blake's fingers until I could feel his bones grinding together, and he never complained once. He just kept telling me that I was doing amazing, and our Rose was almost here. Then I heard yelling. It was distant at first, coming from somewhere down the hall. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew that voice. I'd know it anywhere. Blake's head snapped toward the door. No, 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 no! The yelling got louder. She was screaming about her rights, about her grandbaby, yelled that we were keeping her away from her own family. Blake was out the door before I could stop him. Another contraction hit, and I couldn't do anything but grip the bed rails and try to breathe. I could hear Blake's voice now mixing with Diane's. His was low and hard. Hers was high and hysterical. You need to leave. Right now. Blake, honey, I'm just worried about the baby. You know she's not stable. You've told me yourself. I said leave. I'm your mother. I have every right to be here when my grandchild is born. You have no rights. You lost them when you pushed my pregnant wife down the stairs. I didn't push her. She fell. Why won't anyone believe me? I'm being treated like a criminal when all I've done is love this family. You threatened to call CPS on her. You called her doctor. You called her job. You left a note in our mailbox telling her to enjoy her last weeks with our baby. You're not a concerned grandmother. You're a stalker. How dare you speak to me like that? After everything I sacrificed for you. I gave up my entire life for you, Blake. And this is how you repay me? By choosing her over your own mother? Yes, I'm choosing her. I'm choosing my wife and my daughter. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't leave this hospital, I will call the police myself. The nurse came back in looking shaken. Ma'am, your husband is handling it, but she's asking to speak to a social worker. She's telling people you've threatened to hurt yourself. I laughed. Actually laughed even though another contraction was building. Of course she is. 20 minutes later, a woman in a blazer came in and introduced herself as a social worker. She said she had to do a wellness check based on concerns that had been reported. What concerns? I asked through gritted teeth. Someone claimed you have a history of mental illness and have threatened to harm yourself. They said your husband is too afraid of you to speak up. Blake came back in right then. His face was red and his hands were shaking. That someone is my mother, and she's lying. She's been harassing my wife for months. She's been calling her doctors and her workplace trying to make her look crazy. Every single thing she told you is a lie. The social worker looked at me. Is this true? All of it. Check my medical records. Check the notes from my OB. It's all documented. I put a password on my file because she was calling pretending to be family. She looked at my nurse. Has she shown any signs of instability? None. She's been completely calm and cooperative. The only problem we've had is the woman in the waiting room. Then we heard Diane again, louder this time, screaming. You can't make me leave. That's my grandbaby. She's poisoned all of you against me. You don't know what she's really like. Security had arrived. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Don't touch me. I'm not going anywhere. Blake, don't do this to me. I'm your mother. I'm your mother. Her voice cracked into something that didn't sound human. She's going to destroy you. She's going to take that baby and leave you with nothing. I'm trying to save you. I heard scuffling, heard her screaming about lawyers and rights and how everyone would be sorry. This isn't over. Do you hear me? This isn't over. Her voice got further and further away until finally there was nothing. She screamed all the way to the parking lot. Blake came back to my bedside. His eyes were wet. He took my hand and pressed his forehead against mine. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I didn't have the energy to respond because another contraction hit and suddenly it was time to push. Rose was born at 12:01 that night. They put her on my chest and she was so warm and so small and everything else just stopped. Blake was crying. I was crying. She had dark hair and tiny fingers, and when she opened her eyes and looked at me, I forgot Diane existed. I forgot the screaming and the threats and the months of fear. It was just us. Me and Blake and Rose. Our daughter. Named after my grandmother who raised me. The woman who made me feel like I mattered. Diane didn't get to take that. She didn't get to take anything. Not anymore. Blake and I filed a restraining order 3 days later.